Thanks, of course, to our partners over at Maxonomic for helping us out, talk for a living, by the way, with the SPL. Make sure you head on over to needforseat.com if you want to grab yourself the most comfortable gaming chair on the market. Of course, that is Maxonomic. Of course, so we're moving on to set 2 now as Aggro still joined by Taco here on the desk. As Taco, this one, normally, if you look at the standings, Jade Dragons versus Solar Scarabs, okay, Dragons up top, Scarabs a little bit lower than that. Should be pretty easy, but when you remember how these two teams fared last time they faced off, it was a Solar Scarabs victory.
Can never count any team out right now, and I think that Scarabs for sure are a team that I don't think the public necessarily realizes just how much of a wild card factor this roster really lines up in comparison to the rest of the league, because I feel like Zap with a bunch of young guns, he has a tendency, I think, to look for some pretty outgoing shot calling. And I love the fact that the Scarabs, they just don't really seem scared to try anything out, and that could be a detriment for a team like Jade Dragons, who I think has always had a tendency to fall a little bit more in line with the expected.
Yeah, that Scarabs team definitely a wild card as we take a look at the standings next, because we moved on to Group B. The Jade Dragons sitting at 1-0, the Solar Scarabs not quite as lucky. They fell to the Oni Warriors last week. So the Scarabs now in a near must-win position, going to 0-2, really a death sentence in this group format. And they've got a tough opponent that they have to go up against, but they've shown other teams potentially that blueprint to beating this Dragon squad, because the Scarabs are one of only a few who have done it.
For sure, and not only that, but I think that even in the sets that Scarabs have lost to teams outside of Jade Dragons and whatnot, they always look close. It always looks like there's just one little piece of the puzzle that doesn't exactly find its fit, and that's the one thing that I loved in their original set against Jade Dragons, is that felt to me like the most in sync we'd ever seen with Layers and Baronic.
Layers definitely has stepped up his game as of late. This Tsukiyomi pick is one that I was going to ask you about, Taco. I feel like no one else is really taking it. Besides Layers, it's really been relegated to side lanes. We've seen Ducky play it in solo lane recently. No one else is really piloting this pick except for him.
It can just be a little bit of a risky matchup for a lot of assassins, because the main thing about Tsuki is you want to be the one aggressing. If you're not able to actually find those flank engagements, and I think it actually suits Layer's playstyle, because even going back to his console days, he does have really great patience, and I think that at times it can get the better end of him, but I've really liked how he's just seemed to have a new level of commitment whenever he does actually look for the fight.
Definitely that late game style of pick as well. I mean, if the Scarabs are going to take a lot of these games late, and they really have, that is the type of pick that can really flourish. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most about the Scarabs has been how strong their mental has been. Despite falling behind early, they're able to bounce back. Despite losing game 1, they're looking good in game 2. And I think that's going to be a key for this team moving forward. Talk about him the whole segment. Let's bring him in for the interview, the pregame interview with the jungler for the Solar Scarabs, Layers. Layers, last time you guys played up against the Jade Dragons, it ended up in a set victory for you guys. What are some of the keys to replicating that today?
Just making sure we're on the same page, and playing our game is a big thing. We don't really want to get too focused on them, and just try to focus on ourselves and play the best might that we can.
That Tsukiyomi pick we were just talking about, no one's really playing it that much besides you right now. Why do you think that is, and why do you think it fits your style so perfectly?
I think it's really a strong pick. You can be really patient on it, like you guys were highlighting on the desk. I just think it's really just a strong pick. You don't really have to be like in the thick of things. You can cast from afar. He's one of the few assassins in the game that has like range. So I think he's really solid.
Well, on the other side, Sam, you never know exactly what he's going to pick. He's willing to play a bunch of different things in that jungle. How different is it preparing for a guy like Sam for soccer in the jungle compared to other SPL level players?
I just think he's a great jungler. I mean, obviously, you guys watch him all the time, and I watch some of his gameplay, and he does a lot for the Dragons. He's setting up, he's engaging a lot of times. I just think he's really good compared to some of the other junglers. I think he's one of the best, so it's definitely a lot harder, but I think we can do it. I think we can win again. I mean, we have to. It's like a do or die set, so.
That's right. Do or die. This is time to step up, and you've been in this situation before, and you've ended up on the winning end, so hopefully same for you today, Layers. Good luck, man.
Thank you.
Taco, you heard it. I mean, Sam, you see the respect that Layers has given him, and for good reason. Sam has been a linchpin of every team over the last 3 years that has been really successful.
You can just tell that there's obviously going to be a lot of respect between these players. in their respective roles. But the cool thing about Layers and Sam for Soccer, and what I love about these two teams facing off, is that they both have kind of unconventional god pools. And I think it's really interesting how, despite the fact that they're both willing to run things that other teams might not deem as good, probably a better way to put it, because I know a lot of teams just like aren't too crazy about the Tsukuyomi in the jungle for the fact that, like, yes, he's got range, but he can also be a little bit of a detriment if you're not able to find that initial pick. But Sam's looked really great on this Circuit, exactly, and that's something that I actually want to keep more of an eye on for this set, because I would be kind of hard-pressed to believe that Scarabs have not been taking note of Sam for Soccer on those Mercury and Circuit pickups.
Yeah, his Mercury, man, has just been absolutely nuts as of late. He has looked unstoppable on this pick. He brought Pele out up against the Kings and made that look like a top-tier selection. I mean, you just cannot find someone who is in a more carry position right now, I think, than Sam for Soccer. And I think it came at the right time for him and for this team, because you think about that week where they have a little bit of a stumble up against the Scarabs. You just know that Sam did not play the way that he wanted to, or the way that he expects himself. You saw it from him on Twitter afterwards as well. Him stepping up his game, I think, is going to be a big key for the Dragons returning to Jade Dragon's level.
I think it's safe to say, though, that when it comes to the Dragons, whether it's a loss on a live set or even a loss in scrims, these guys are very invested into their craft, and I know for a fact that they're never going to be satisfied unless they're winning, and it's not even like a standard win, because even when they win, they're not necessarily happy about it. They want that domination factor to come through, and I know for a fact that it's not going to be like a vengeance tour by any means, because you'd never want to tunnel vision and let yourself lose sight, because you don't just want to harp on the fact, okay, we lost to these guys before, we definitely have to bounce back this time. I do believe that the Jade Dragons are definitely going to do what they can to put Sam and Fino into more favorable positions, possibly even with their god choices, maybe locking in some ideal picks early on, maybe anticipating that Scarabs would be looking to try and isolate Sam and Fino.
Yeah, those two have really tried to switch up what they're picking, a lot of different picks for them. Overall, still the number one pick for the Jade Dragons on the phase is that King Arthur selection. You can kind of assume why. They're also, again, all according to Gore's handy-dandy stat sheet, undefeated with Cucullin, 5 for 5 on that pick. So know pretty much where Fine's going to go if given the option.
Give Fine a god that can actually control team fights and control what Fino does best, and why Sam is so willing to make the sacrifice and farm sometimes to head towards that soul lane, is because Fino understands how to control a team fight. He understands how to separate the carries from their front line, and if he's able to create all that space for Jade, that's an ideal situation for Sam. That's where gods like the Mercury, like the Circuit, they only tack on to that separation factor, and that's for sure. If the Solar Scarabs have been doing their homework like I expected them to, because sure, you might have beat them the first go around, but it was definitely close.
Yes, it was close, and you know the Jade Dragons are going to look to step up their game in order to prevent that from happening once again, and immediately two picks that have looked very good recently for the Dragons that the Solar Scarabs did not have to deal with the first time around. The Chiron and the Mercury are taken away, and the Dragons recognize exactly the pick that we've identified for Layers in that Tsukuyomi.
I am surprised, though, to see the Heimdallr ban coming through for the Jade Dragons. Just have to assume that they are doing whatever they can to put Zap in the hotspot, possibly. I could for sure see some heavy aggression coming from Jade Dragons into that duo lane, and we were talking about it in the last set, because we saw those Fafnir bans coming through consistently. No Fafnir ban on the board so far.
Or Yamoja, or Athena. You got a lot.
Or Cucullin.
That's open right now. Or Cucullin, or King Arthur. You got a lot of options, and it's telling to me that the Scarabs banned Tiamat themselves in that first pick position, maybe not feeling like they're ready to take that for Baronic right away, because they could have put the Dragon in a slot where he either gets Tiamat or Giannis. They decided to take the safe route instead. The Solar Scarabs likely thinking about which frontliner they should be taking in this spot, and it ends up being the Cucullin. Do you think he was the best available, though, Taco, with things like Yamoja, Sobek, Fafnir, King Arthur available?
Best available overall, not necessarily, but I do think it's a pick that the Solar Scarabs feel very comfortable and confident with, because Cucullin, he'll be able to at least stalemate that solo lane, and we all know how much Jade Dragons like to apply pressure into solo. Kakolin's going to be able to provide, I think, some good early team fight presence. I'm hoping that they just double down with a little bit of jungle pressure here for Layers. Set still on the table as well, but Jade Dragons having that Gilgamesh Fafnir, those gods can definitely make Set's life a nightmare.
Really, really strong start for the Jade Dragons, solidifying that front line. We've seen FinoK be one of the only, I think he is the only solo laner to put Gilgamesh in solo, so might actually see that, but could always be flexed to Sam in the jungle. Raijin's the pickup for Baronic. It has been Merlin the vast majority of the time for him. That's the Scarabs' most picked god overall, but they decided to go the Raijin this time around, which does make some sense. Definitely a comfort pick still for Baronic, thinking back to his god pool on the Xbox days. And Yemoja comes through for inbound as well. This is their most picked Guardian in Yemoja.
Yemoja is a solid pickup here for inbound. I think the idea might even be to just drop that crushing wave whenever Gilgamesh drops his ultimate to maybe prevent the Jade Dragons from having as smooth of a collapse as they would be looking for. But Panicat, I mean, is it really any surprise that this guy is going to be looking for a fight and no jump? He does not care about the Yemoja. He is willing to just go all in with this.
I think we saw this from him last week as well. This feels like a matchup that should be horrible for
Panzabaru.
Danza. Yeah, just going for Danza into the Yemoja. That feels like it should be a horrible matchup for the Danza, but Panda not dissuaded. He wasn't last time, and he shouldn't have been because he absolutely popped off on it. Where do you think Danza really ranks among the ADCs?
I'm honestly not that big of a fan of Danzabaru, but I know that Fino is just such an incredibly good hunter. I don't think it really matters what you throw him on. He's going to make any pick look like it's S tier.
Yeah, that's certainly been the case for him so far. Panicat has been absolutely phenomenal this phase, even when the Jade Dragons are struggling, as the Dragons take a look at both Zapman and Layers on her and set bans, respectively, for those two players, and Scarabs split their bans as well in Scylla and Serket, and this Soul pickup is the call for Heroind. You got a Fafnir on your side already. I think Soul is really strong right now. I think that she's got a lot of pretty viable build paths. I like this Soul pick a lot.
This is some crazy objective shred is what I'm really taking note of right now from Jade Dragons, because Gilgamesh can do all the zone duty in the world. Fafnir even, as long as he drops that coerce on the team after the transformation, he can also play a heavy pin into preventing any sort of like follow-up for contest, and how much contest opportunities are you really going to have when the objective is gone in 3 seconds or less?
Yeah, not a whole lot, to be fair. I mean, every single pick for the Jade Dragons loves more attack speed between Danza, Soul, and Gilgamesh. Of course, Gilgamesh has that auto attack stim with the 1. I don't know, man. This Fafnir pick, I think, is going to be huge for Mike, as it's the Susano pickup this time around. This has been a pick that when we see it, it's usually in Panatom's hands for the Atlantis Leviathans. But this is a pick that Layers was known for on the console.
I also really like this pick for Layers, because one thing that Panicat does have a tendency to do is Panicat loves to box. Panicat loves to be aggressive because he knows he's good at it. And I think Susano is just going to be an absolute nightmare for this Danzabaru potentially, or at least that seems to be the mindset that I'm grabbing from the Solar Scarabs. I do think that between the Yemoja and the Susano, life could get a little bit difficult for Pandacat, but at the same time, Soul has a great tool with that Disapparate to get outside of that crushing wave. She can maybe try and create some space. And Hurrywin, last time he rocked the Soul, even though they didn't win every single one of those games, he was still top of the charts in terms of player damage, so he's definitely able to still apply the initial DPS, and I think that can go a long way when you have follow-up like Nemesis and the Gilgamesh for the dive after the fact.
And adding in just another character that loves getting extra attack speed, and the Nemesis, I think, fits this draft perfectly. I mean, I look at the Jade Dragons draft, and it just is cohesive from top to bottom. I understand the game plan. It's about playing around objectives. It's about utilizing this Fafnir Coerce. I look at the Solar Scarabs draft, and it's good top to bottom. It looks like good standard Smite, but I don't see the overall cohesiveness of it.
It's the objective burn for me as well, because when you do, so often teams will have these elongated fights, especially if the matches do start to dabble into that 30-minute plus area, and EFG, Gold Furies even, they can be really hard to try and actually do anything about when Jade Dragons are, I think they just have such better outright burn for these objectives.
Especially around the towers and the Phoenixes and stuff like that. I mean, how do you stop this team on the siege?
Is it the Jingwei? I think that's the part that looks the most awkward in this comp, because I like Raijin, because even when you think about what Raijin Taiko drums, Susano Typhoon, those ultimates work excellently hand in hand, but Jingwei, it's more about the survivability factor, I think, here for Zap. Maybe probably going to be seeing him lean more into that crit-based build as well that we saw from set 1 out of Cyclone. But I'm just not sure that even Jingwei with crit is going to be enough to really balance out the real shred that this Fafnir is providing.
I'm just not quite sure where the Scarabs anticipate getting their pressure from in this match, because maybe Cucullin beats Gilgamesh in lane. We haven't seen a huge sample size of Gilgamesh in solo lane, so maybe that's the area, but the mid 3v3, Dragon's favored. The duo lane, Dragon's favored. And that's not the type of composition you want against a team like the Dragons.
It's just, I hate to say perfect, but it almost seems like a perfect draft from the Dragons. And again, Solar Scarabs, it's not bad. It's just, is it good enough?
Dragons seem like they have the ball in their court so far,
Yes.
but that doesn't mean that it's already over. The Scarabs have shown resiliency over all else here in Phase 1. We'll see if they can weather the storm that the Jade Dragons are inevitably about to throw. Let's throw it down to Dave Olson and Gormizer for the cast.
It's time for the Scarabs and the Dragons to go toe-to-toe once more. Last time the Solar Scarabs won, handing the Jade Dragons one of the rare losses for this team. It is Dolson, Gore, and Doug bringing you game number 1. We've left home, Gore. We've made our way into the studio. We probably put some pants on. We'll see here by the end of the game. But this is an interesting one. High implications.
that took a second to process.
This is great. This is great being in studio because I can see your immediate facial reaction to me saying something like that rather than wondering. And it was disgust for you guys at home who are wondering.
No, it was confusion.
It was confusion.
Followed by,
oh, that makes sense. But serious group implications here in this matchup.
Yes, this is a big one. The Scarabs need a big win for themselves. And I'll say, not just for you, but I think for everybody watching, strap in. The last time I was here, it was a 3-game set. It didn't feel like a set going into it that was going to be 3 games. And then it was a murky game 1 where the Scarabs won a lot of fights but ended up losing to the Dragons in the late game. And then it was 2 really dominating performances from the Scarabs, so I like to see it. I think they won a lot of that set in their picks and bans. I think their draft style really helped beat on what the Dragons were good with, and I hope that they can bring that. One of the things that was a saving grace over the last couple of weeks has been this Yemoja for Bobby, so I'm really excited to see what Inbound can do with this. And I'm also excited to see this Gilgamesh in solo. I feel like we've gotten to see him flex around and jump around a lot, a little bit in the jungle, over there in support. I think Mike played him last week. Maybe I'm misremembering it was somebody else, but I'd give it to Mike if I had to just blanket statement who was going to do it. So I'm interested to see what FineOK can do up against that Cucullin, who has been notoriously a top pick lately. I think last week, he was one of the top bans. He was also one of the most picked if he did come through, kind of up towards the top, either number 1 or at least in the top 3. So there's a lot of threats on the board to keep your eye on here.
Absolutely, and the desk conveyed some worry about where the pressure would come from for the Solar Scarabs. Early on, it's being placed by the Dragons onto Inbound here. Zapman able to outtrade Panda Cat just a little bit at both supports. Had left lane there. Of course, the Yemoja going to have some extra sustain, but here in the mid lane, Hurriwin being jumped on the Aegis, potentially saving the life of the Soul there out of mid, but early fireworks in the middle of the map.
Something that they're going to have to be very worried about. Hurwind, I think, is going to be a big threat. This is something that has been happening a little bit more often. Sam's actually going in!
Oh, and he's got first blood. The blink and the double dash is enough to grab the first kill of the game onto Layers. And how about the map awareness of Sam for Soccer to know where Layers is going to be, and Layers probably thinking Sam has just made his way elsewhere. And that is a tough start because Sam has now been able to farm up one of those back camps, purple buff, soon to be respawning here. And the Nemesis could, Gore, be looking for a gank behind the duo lane.
I was going to say, it's a win-win scenario. Either get the experience buff and strip it away, or you get to fight over here. And with Fafnir around you, they're going to be going in. The stun not going to connect from Inbound, but not a lot of follow-up. Panda Cat kind of stayed back. They had too much minion pressure, I think, there for the duo lane. With Layers coming back right over here, all of that could be and would have been in the jungle. Looks like it's going to go ahead and disappear. But I think it's like you said, good presence on Sam specifically to be aware and to get aggressive as things have been going for him. At this point, it's just staying alive, and that's arguably supposed to be one of the safest spots on the map for you to back. It's just like looking at his player cam, you saw a sliver, like a line of pixels on his screen was the recall circle, and that's all he needed to get aggressive there.
Well, Gore, looking down towards the jungler builds here, do you see some normalcy here? Because Layers has gone full boots first overall. Sam for Soccer, no boots at all, but has the tier 1 Katana down there for themselves. Is that about what you expect, though, given the characters that these two are playing?
It makes a lot of sense. I think that's going to be the way Sam goes. The question will be, does he finish his boots first, or does he finish off the Katana first? Probably going to go towards boots relatively soon, but this is going to help him clear a little bit earlier on. It's going to help him be a little more aggressive. I think it's going to pay off dividends as time continues moving forward for him, but there's a little bit of pressure on him, right? That movement speed, now that Layers, I mean, kind of artificially got a forced back there to get the full boots, but still, he has those full boots online. We should see him traverse the map a lot more often. Now the Warrior Tabe online for Sam should keep up in rotations, at least for that one, but there's definitely, I think, a little more of a threat to the build coming down from Sam right now. Just because he already has that Tier 1 online, I think he's going to be able to hit a little harder, a little faster.
We'll see if this Nemesis can find some pressure early on in the game here. A duel happening over in the duo lane. Zapman has to airstrike away, but Panda Cat solo as inbound will look to chase down the kill, but Sam for Soccer is here.
Okay.
And the ultimate is gone down onto inbound. The rocket flies through for the last bit of damage, and a couple autos is all Sam needs. Now 2-0. On the board for the Jade Dragons jungler.
I will admit, part of me forgot you could launch the rocket. I
like
like being the rocket, and so being able to launch it safely down the lane, perfect for Panda Cat to be able to get his self-assist over there and make sure things go their way. And a kill onto inbound, I think, again, a lot of pressure onto the duo lane. That's something that they had hearkened to on the desk, something that they have to be a little more aware of, because there's a lot of spots where the Dragons can outright win just in terms of pick pressure that they're going to be bringing here. I think the team fight, at least for the Scarabs, is going to be very frightening. A lot of good healing on it, a lot of good control, good peel, and really good setup. That River's Rebuke from Umoja can be massive.
Final K peeking into his own blue buff here. Layers sensing that Sam for Soccer has been over on the left side of the map for a little while. Is going to choose to put some pressure over on the right. Successful blue buff invade now for the Solar Scarabs. Things not going well on the left-hand side. Maybe you start to look towards the right, but Jade Dragons continuing to put pressure onto Zapman, onto inbound as well. Still level 4. For this Umoja. Sam for Soccer rotates back through, does not have his ultimate up just yet, but still has plenty of damage to work in onto Zapman, who will get burned away, and Sam for Soccer is on a killing spree 5.5 minutes in.
That was a good target swap. It felt like inbound was the one that they wanted to focus down and try to lock down, and they got him relatively low, but then immediately they drive it home into Zap. Plus, he was in the much more dangerous position there in the jungle now, about 2,000 gold, just a little under there. Same thing for experience. It is a very good start for the Dragons, and admittedly, this is how the games they typically win start, with them snowballing in the first 6 minutes. The games they've been struggling with in the last, 2, 3, 4 weeks have been these games where they're not allowed to really control anything. And I mean, the Scarabs did it to them a few weeks ago. They were able to find those very early game controlling fights. It seems like right now things are not quite going the way they want, but then I look at their draft and I think, man, Susano's going to be better with time, Raijin's going to be better with time, Umoja's going to be better with time, Kakullen's going to be in the fights. I think there's a lot that can be said over the next 5 minutes for the Scarabs, maybe next 10 minutes for him.
Oh, I hate that for SOT. He did 99.9% of the damage to the Greater Scorpion and loses it and might lose his life as well. It's a big Typhoon from Layers, but it's a 2-kill sweep for the Jade Dragons. This time Hurrywind rotates in and will pick up one. Gore, this is probably the worst way that the first 6 minutes and 45 seconds of this game could have gone for the Solar Scarabs. Only Baronic has not died yet, and he is still 1 level down. There's a 2-level difference already built out of the jungle. PBM is going to help secure the red buff invade here. SOT didn't even get the Greater Scorpion a moment ago. This is the game that the Jade Dragons look to play, and the Solar Scarabs now have a tall task to get themselves back into it. 2K was about a minute ago. We're now at 3K of a differential. Inbound sticks his head into the wrong part of town, and he'll have to leave. Maybe it's just about slowing down this pace score, because 5 kills in 7 minutes feels real bad if you're a Solar Scarab.
I mean, but that's the hard part. I mean, look at this. PBM is, well, not by himself anymore, but getting aggressive, hyper-aggressive onto him, willing to dive at Tier 2. Zapman has no health, hardly any mana enough to contest this purple buff. And that's the downside right now, is you have a good draft, but it's going to take a little while to get online, even more so because, as you highlighted, everybody has fallen behind in terms of where they are.
Oh, no.
Look, if your support's traveling like that in the jungle, you're absolutely feeling yourselves. This is a point, again, maybe even a turning point, to just dig your heels in as the Scarabs. At this point, you need more farm than you need fights. The problem is the Dragons aren't really giving you the choice.
Yeah, the net worth chart score completely split top to bottom. PBM is the lowest on the Dragons, but higher than everyone else on the Solar Scarabs. He's got more gold than everyone will but SOT, who will bounce back and forth with him. And that doesn't feel good. Look, apparently Fafnir does some decent damage when you've got a 2-level lead over your counterpart and you're only 1 or 2 levels behind the rest of the Solar Scarabs here. And isn't that so frightening when PBM not only gets a pick like this, but has a lead like this and can start to play more aggressively? He has the confidence at all times to go try to 1v1 a Hunter, but now he has the actual strength in levels and gold to do that. It's quite literally worst case scenario, it feels like, here for the Scarabs.
That's where things get really scary for me, I think is the best way to describe it, is if you look at the enemy jungler and your support or vice versa, that level discrepancy needs to exist just to begin with. It's level 8 to 8 layers to PBM. Same thing, Zap to PBM, and just 9 to 8 there for Baronic, 1 level, now 10 over PBM. So there's definitely a little more focus, I think, that the Scarabs need to start putting on this left side of the map, try to keep Zap inbound back into it, but also find a way to get layers into this, alleviate some of the pressure from the Dragons, and potentially get themselves a Gold Fury. There's definitely a lot of neutral objectives that can swing them back into this game, but things haven't been going their way.
Panda's getting looked at here by layers and inbound. Where did health bar go? Pandacat does almost 100% of inbound's health in just a second or two, and layers does not want to suffer the same fate, so he will leap away. And at this point, Gore, the left side of the map might just be forfeit because Pandacat has 1 level lead. He's 1-0-2 over Zapman, who's 0-2. The right side of the map is the only side that hasn't really been looked at after SOT got caught over by that greater Scorpion. It's the scariest question maybe an analyst has to answer, especially 9 minutes and 50 seconds into this game. Is there an avenue back into this game for the Solar Scarabs?
So this is not the immediate answer that I wish I had for you. I will say the Scarabs were on a receiving end of a game like this last week, right? I mean, like, they got absolutely beat down in game number 1, and then games 2 and 3 looked a lot better. So if this continues at this trajectory right now, I will say the glory is that they have really good set turnarounds. But I will say for this game, I don't think they're really that far out of it. I just think it's one of those moments that you unfortunately can't contest as much as you want. When you're 10 minutes in being told that you can't contest a Gold Fury, it's asinine, right? I mean, that's so ridiculous to be told, but you have to be looking for some of the plays that you can make on your side of the map. Unfortunately, there's not enough farm. And admittedly, with at least the tier 1 on left down, you're losing a lot of pressure, like around that purple buff. Now all of a sudden that's dangerous. What Zapman just did is dangerous. Trying to get these mid camps is dangerous because you're one bad stun, one bad engage away from virtually getting killed off.
Oh man, big burst damage from Hurrywin to engage, force Baronic and inbound out of this fight. No chance for Layers. Now when PBM is going to leap in, but Layers looking like he'll be able to survive. But SOT rounds the backside, grabs the kill on a Sanford Soccer. That's a shutdown onto the Nemesis as the rest of the Jade Dragons grouped up here. Zapman pouring out damage from the backline, but Fino K has had enough. It's a double kill for the Gilgamesh, a drop kick against the wall, and now Solo Lane starting to get unchained as well.
And SOT gets out of there alive. I meant to mention this earlier in the set, but this is his 200th competitive game. I think he wishes right now that it could be going a little bit better for him. But he has made that a pretty big threshold for himself. Something I literally couldn't figure out how to fit it in other than, hey, I'm talking about SOT right now. Might as well throw it out there while I have the chance because so far it's been all Dragons all day. What is that, 6,000 gold, a little over, that's in their favor. About to go up even more because of the Pyromancer experience in their favor by a pretty large margin, almost 8,000 in that regard. I mean, you know, hate them, love them, whatever you want to say. They are winning this game right now, and there's not a lot of avenues back into it. That being said, and this is where things get really interesting, at least can be interesting, the Scarabs, at this large of a deficit, there's 2 ways to look at this. They still have 4 towers standing. That's a plenty to make a stand by. You can easily defend some of these tier 2s still at this point in the game, and it is dangerous but still plausible to not only mount a defense, but win a defense, and then potentially shift that into a Fire Giant. We haven't really gotten into that conversation. That's usually, 18 minutes into the game. So the Dragons aren't going to be able to get that anytime soon and get that huge power buff.
Right.
That is, I think, the opening for the Scarabs. They've got 6-7 minutes before that window maybe shuts on them. And as long as they can keep up, maybe not this pace, a different pace, to say the least, but one where they are finding successful defenses. They're not too stressed out about the aggression from the Dragons. Might have to give up the Oni Fury as it respawns. In a few minutes, you might have to give up a Pyromancer, but you need to mount a base defense at this point. I think if you can slow the Dragons down around there, that's where you get some kills, and that's where kill bounties come into the equation, right? You kill Herowind, if inbound's even an assist on that, he could jump up to level 9, 10, 11, right? Like, there's some big changes that could happen with just a single kill on the board for the Scarabs.
You can get a difference in mindset of where this game is for both of the supports as well. PBM 106 has been maybe the driving force alongside Sanford Soccer and all of the Jade Dragons' pressure. 13.5 minutes in. Gauntlet of Thebes score to start off for PBM. That'll keep stacking up. Inbound has gone into the Breastplate of Valor. Obviously works well with Ymoja's kit with the mana and all that sort of fun stuff. And if it speaks to his confidence, my man PBM is going second item, a little bit of magical power there, Gore. So when you're that far ahead, when you're 3 levels ahead of your support counterpart over on the Solar Scarabs, maybe that affords you the ability to build a little power.
And again, on level with the jungler there for the layers, and that's going to be, I think, where his confidence can come through. Is he's been aggressive, he's been playing aggressive, he hasn't been punished for it yet, and that's the key word is that yet, because it's right. 3 small letters. But that being a power item as opposed to a defense item could be the thing that ends up being his downfall. All of a sudden, Baronic, Layers, Zapman are going to be doing a lot more damage to him. But if you're looking at confidence, not just from Mike, I'm looking at Sam. He's gone for the Shadow Steel Shuriken. Like, it has attack speed. That's something where, like, that stat I'm used to seeing on the Nemesis, but he's gone for crit. It's got that anti-heal, though, and I think that's kind of where things are going to be coming into it. I expect to see more of those coming through, but 40% reduced healing. Admittedly, only when you crit strike, so 20% chance. It's not going to happen maybe too much for him. I guess it depends on the rest of the build.
Probably 20% of the time.
But yeah, you're really starting to feel, I guess, confident in your capabilities. If you're going for something like that over your brawlers, typically you don't have any anti-heal on either your support or your solo laner just yet, although that might change here with FindOK's next item. No Divine Ruin online for Heroin. Like, they're putting a lot of pressure, I think, onto specifically Sam
good point.
And his auto attacks to get the anti-heal off.
Oni Fury started up now by the Jade Dragons. It's a Spear of Desolation that Polar Bear Mike has finished off there, and if he continues doing the assist thing, as he has been, those cooldowns will be up often in these fights to compound, do some more assisting and probably some killing here for the Jade Dragons. Oni Fury was stalled for a second, but re-pulled, and I think this is smart, Gore. The Solar Scarabs know this is going on, but at the state of this game, an Oni Fury likely not worth dying over. Maybe you send somebody in to try to get a steal, but probably not worth a full-on team fight.
Yeah, I think, again, they're just trying to stay in pace at this point. Layers is 3 levels behind. He's not going to be able to have the impact that Sam is. But I also think there's some conversation to be had for the Scarabs to get a little more aggressive after they get some farm going for them, because there's not a lot of easy secure. There's a lot of good burn on the Dragons. You have PBM going to Dragon form, coerce everybody. Any objective that stands in your way is going to get melted right there. But who's going to be the one that secures it? Like, Soul, I mean, her ult does a lot of damage, but it's 9 quick bursts, quick shots, not one giant damager. And so I think there's an opportunity for Layers, Ronick, again, Zap, especially with his ult, the way we've seen Jingwei play it, although Barra mistimed his a couple of times, maybe Zap might mistime his a little bit too. And there's a lot of opportunities for them to still make a presence be felt around a Fire Giant, a Pyromancer, go for a steal. Granted, I mean, everything I'm talking about is very risky business if they decide to get in there, but I feel like risky business is about to be all they have left.
SOT's been kicked by the wayside here as the Tier 2 tower siege continues for the Jade Dragons. Bit of a duel over on the left-hand side of the map as Sanford Soccer wants to get aggressive onto Zapman. Let's see if those crits ring true, and they sure do for Sanford Soccer. Zapman goes bye-bye, and in I think one purchase score. I didn't even see the 1-2 tier item pop up in the shop. I think he just straight up bought it. And now that 20% chance has gotten a little bit higher. Inbound throws up the River's Rebuke, but no matter as PBM chops him down. Panda Cat uses the Aegis, but Layers will pick up the kill there. And now the re-engage from the Jade Dragons is swift. It's a double kill for the support of the Jade Dragons. PBM 306.
And now still chasing them down. It doesn't matter if you get SOT or Baronic here. Look at the pressure they should be able to get on the Tier 2. Last tower standing for the Scarabs, by the way. 17 minutes in.
Without a Fire Giant.
Looking to go down. I mean, this is something that is, deadly. Without a Fire Giant being taken, this is that moment where I typically would have said and would have expected to see a team back off for a Fire Giant. They might actually be overextending here on the Dragon.
Wow, look at Sam. He's feeling confident, huh? That's been the name of the game for the Jade Dragon. Sam really just buys some space there for the rest of the Jade Dragons to secure the mid lane Phoenix. 17 minutes, 40 seconds into the game. Fire Giant has not been taken. Every tower is gone off of the map for the Solar Scarabs. And one Phoenix is gone as well. Left and right left standing. So now, inevitably, Gore, there's a Primal Fury probably a couple minutes from now. Fire Giant, Pyromancer still left standing. If you're the Dragons, I don't even know if you need to wait the next couple of minutes for this Primal Fury to come up. The Scarabs chipped away some of your health underneath that Phoenix, but I'm not sure they can compete under an FG fight.
Yeah, I mean, and even still, like, look at all the pressure, like, safe havens. Even if a team fight starts to go the way of the Scarabs, you have all of your towers still standing. Like, you could lose a fight and still withstand more of the map technically now than what the Scarabs have left on their side of the map. It doesn't even look like they're going to have to worry too much about that, though. Yeah, the Fire Giant just goes kind of by the wayside. The damage, this crit build right now, something I didn't expect to say today, if I'm being honest, from the Nemesis of all things, is going pretty well for Sam. Something I'll put my neck out on the line for this one. I'll say that I don't think this would necessarily work if he was very even with them. I think it is something that is kind of paved because he's 4 levels ahead of layers. Right? But it's definitely going to help it out. I mean, we saw how easily he was able to take that 1v1 onto Zap. Now that he's got a much heftier level lead, it feels like it's going to be a lot easier for him to dive the backline and just absolutely beat down anybody who gets there. I'm still looking towards inbound, though. It was around a Phoenix that he found a good defense. What was that? Against the Leviathans. Turned a huge gameplay, and I mean, they were at a deficit. They were losing it. That Rivers Rebuke can absolutely defend one of these, but look at the spacing. They're just now starting to back. It feels like it might be a little late here for the Scarabs. They might be caught out.
There's kind of an awkward half defense as PBM half-health Sporonic, who has to leave the fight, but instead the Raijin will stick around. Sanford Soccer working down the mid wave with 2 waves of fire minions behind him. 5-1 and 1 for the Nemesis right now. Solar Scarabs fully reinforced under this left side Phoenix. Zapman channeling his back, so maybe now the Jade Dragons go because it's going to take a minute for the Jingwei to get back, and inbound traps himself in the Rivers Rebuke, but is able to walk away thanks to the Riptide. Finoke chases down the Yamoja. Layers loses the 1v1 to Sanford Soccer, but makes his way alive back into the fountain. It's SOT, the last Solar Scarab left standing beneath the left side. Phoenix, who let out a roar, and the Jade Dragons look to continue on.
No, SOT's just melted. That Phoenix is still gone. Fire minions from mid coming in, and they still have, what, 2 minutes, 15 seconds on the Fire Giant? I feel like you do not do anything but go for the Titan.
Yeah, Zapman, Baronic, you got the damage online. Layers is there as well, but you've got no frontline. Layers finds his way into the back, but the Jade Dragons have all eyes on the Titan. This one, all Dragons, all day. And in 20 minutes and 28 seconds, Gore, the Jade Dragons will find themselves in control of game number 1. Not particularly close.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. I think I saw some good play that existed there for the Scarabs, but not enough, right, that you're able to truly pull things back into your favor. So I think there's a lot of cracking to do going into the next set, or the next game. And I will say, once again, the big thing they had going for them that I think is going to continue going for them is that they received... Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. There's no way to describe it other than this. They received a beating like that
they sure did.
Last week. Actually, one more severe, some could say. So I think this is a really good opportunity for the Scarabs to bounce back. They've already showed that they have that capability. So just kind of mental resolve, figure out what went wrong there. A lot of it seemed to be just getting down early game. So if they can kind of clean up the first 6 minutes, I think everything will be fine from that point forward.
There's not many teams in the league that could compete with the Jade Dragons team that is playing that fast in the early game. So it's back to the drawing board for the Solar Scarabs. Gore and I will take a break. We'll be right back with game number 2.
Lose the intoxication.
back, everybody, to the SPL, powered by Alienware, but looking good, courtesy of Insight Apparel. You can head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com. That's where you can get your favorite jerseys, hoodies, team shirts, all that kind of good stuff. Again, shop.smiteproleague.com. I just got my SPL dad hat today, and I look forward to wearing it. I asked if I could wear it on broadcast, and Hindu Man slapped me. That's not true. He would get in trouble if he did that. I realized there are actual consequences for saying something like that. He did not do it. And I'm not. It's not like he did it and then said, "Don't say that I did it," and then that's why I said all this stuff. It never happened.
It definitely
Trust
happened.
me, it did. Taco, you're coming back in and you're messing with me day one, man. It's fine. I'll get over it. Hindu Man's gonna be mad at you now, not me, because I said he didn't do it. I'll tell you what didn't happen in game one. It was not a Scarabs victory, that's for sure.
No.
That one was about as far from it as you can get. But look, even before we get into breaking it down, it is worth noting that this is exactly the type of game that the Scarabs lost against the Jade Dragons last time they played in game one, and then they came back to win the set. So this does not mean it's over, but boy, oh boy, was this one not close.
This is where the test of the Scarabs' mental resilience and their player fortitude is really going to shine through, is whether or not they're going to be able to have that sort of repeat performance, or at least replicating the part where they brought things out to a game 3. But this was just brutal from start to finish, entirely in Dragon's favor. And honestly, Aggro, every single time I reference it, it just comes back to the draft for me, because Jade Dragons, I don't think there was a single part of this comp that they did not originally want.
Really could have blind picked it if you ask them, because it looked that good for them. Final K keeps making me think, why is no other solo laner playing Gilgamesh? Because he looks so good on it. Sam for Soccer got off to a great start, had both of the first 2 early kills, and then PBM top damage in the entire game on the Fafnir. Yes, he went Deso 3rd item into Pythags, but my man still had 11k damage. That's more than everybody else as the support.
That's kind of what you love to see, though, for a Fafnir, is you want him to be that controlling factor in the early to mid game, and Mike just really left no options for recovery out of the Scarabs, whether it was surrounding the objective play or just outright running them down in the tower. Fafnir just has a lot more movement than what I think some players would initially expect in the heat of the moment. So the fact that Mike even opted for a little bit of a damage hybrid build to begin with, I don't think it really caught the Scarabs off guard by any means, but I don't think that they really had any sort of assets to try and mitigate the damage output that was coming from just the Fafnir alone. I can definitely justify the thought process behind wanting to eliminate Mercury, but Chiron just strikes me as such an oddball ban. And even the Gilgamesh, I really do feel like if you had to split the decision between getting rid of Gilgamesh or Fafnir, Fafnir for sure feels like a lot more of a controlling element here for the Jade Dragons. And if Scarabs opt for that Kakolin first pick again, I'm just not entirely sold on it going the way that they would imagine if Jade Dragons are able to get Fafnir.
Well, both mid laners left open in Giannis and Tiamat, and the Jade Dragons telling the Scarabs to pick their poison. They decided to go with Giannis for Baronic, and this was the pick that he has looked better on. I think for what it's worth, the Scarabs make the right call. When you look at what the level of play that Baronic has had on the Giannis in comparison to that Tiamat, he's had both picks. He's looked significantly better on the Giannis. I think Tiamat's a better god, but I think Baronic's a better Giannis player, so I think the Scarabs likely make the right choice.
Baronic also, Giannis, again, another one of those characters that just stems back to his console days, so for sure a lot of familiarity in this pick, a lot of mobility being introduced as well, but one more time, Jade Dragons, they're totally content with just taking that Fafnir in that top 3 pick selection choice, and now with the Kakolin alongside of it, I mean, it's almost like a pick your poison if you ask me, and if I had to decide between Gilgamesh and Kakolin, I'm still not really too keen on either.
Yeah, you're not feeling good either way. I think the Jade Dragon's still smiling, and don't worry, I think they're going to take Tiamat 3rd. There's just no reason to take it in the top 2 when you know the Scarabs already have their mid laner. They have to fill out some other positions, including the solo lane, where they're going to take that King Arthur. You feel like what the Scarabs need now, as it's a Hercules pickup. Interesting. So we have seen Hercules as of late, but he's been in solo lane for Haddix in particular. He's really liked him. This is going to be a support Hercules here.
Most likely. That's kind of where my thought process was going, is that this screams Bobby pick all day long. I think Inbound could certainly try to utilize this Hercules potentially just apply a little bit more pressure and not let Fafnir have that free roam period, because that was one thing that Mike was definitely doing a great job on in game one. He was just all over the map with Fafnir. He was jumping, trying to just create any sort of chaos that he could, whether it was heavily impactful or not. Just his presence alone was enough to kind of set everybody else from Scarabs back.
So now we take a back look at the junglers. Set banned by the Dragon, Cirquet by the Solar Scarabs. These are picks that both of these junglers have gone to pretty consistently. It's actually the Dragons who decided to ban out Danzaburo this time around.
My concern right now for Scarabs, it really does boil down to their assassin choice. And I know that Tsukiyumi is something that Layers has for sure fallen onto more often than not in a lot of these Scarab sets, but I'm not sure that Tsukiyumi alone is going to have necessarily the cleanup potential to take out the Tiamat, because Fafnir Kakolin, again, that is a really solidified front line. It's very hard to break through, and even when you do, you're usually taking a good chunk of your HP bar to do it.
Oh, the Zuler comes out here in game number 2. We just saw Uller for Yarkor, and it won, but didn't look as good as he did on, say, the Heimdall the next game. We just talked about the Uller Taco, but overall still feel like it might not be as strong as some of these other hunters.
I'm just not really sure what the persistence is for an Uller pickup as opposed to some other hunters that might have a little bit of CC immunity in their kit, because even when you chalk it up at the grand scheme of things, if you get caught out without being in axe stance past 20 minutes, you usually just die, especially against teams like Jade Dragons, who are so consistent at working as one cohesive unit. I don't know if Zap's going to have a great time. Also seeing a very heavy physical lineup here for the Scarabs, but it also just screams early game aggression. These guys are looking for a heads-up snowball, and I honestly think that they might have even put their do-or-die circumstances to a bit of a coin flip with this comp.
Yeah, I think that the Scarabs are definitely, they're pushing their chips all in with this draft. I mean, it's early game across the board, as you mentioned. It's physical heavy. You've got Hercules, Uller, Ratatosker. I mean, those are picks that are trying to gun you down. And you look at the other side for the Jade Dragons, the Susano pick doesn't fight particularly well early. Their duo lane does. I don't think Tiamat fights particularly well early. I think that you've got an opportunity to maybe exploit some of this pressure, but at the same time, what do the Scarabs do if Tiamat just builds a Breastplate of Valor?
It's a very slim margin, I think, for the Solar Scarabs for this. If they can play it perfect, which I know that they're capable, it's just whether or not this is going to be the game, especially with so much additional, it's a subconscious thought, I think, as a pro, to know that this game could ultimately determine what happens moving forward.
That's right. Don't forget that the Solar Scarabs definitely have a lot on the line right here. They go down 0-2 in this group stage. They are basically toast for making it to the playoffs. So this is a do-or-die game for the Solar Scarabs, and they've put their trust in a hard-to-execute composition, but one that can get ahead early. We'll see if they can roll the ball along, as the Scarabs tend to do, or if the Jade Dragons will be saying Bazinga after game number 2. Dave, it's all yours.
Bazinga is right, Aggro. I guess that's going to be a thing from now on. Bazinga is the buzzword here.
Does it have to be?
So we're not about it. All right, Bazinga's going by the wayside. Gormizer spoken. When Gore is legitimately against something like that, that's when you have to...
I would say, against. I just say I think we can reconsider constructively.
Sure. As a unit.
Come up with some other words that are probably a little more...
We'll come together.
Better.
Right, you're right. We'll come together. We'll brainstorm some ideas. And Bazinga will be a part of that group. But we cannot definitively say whether or not Bazinga would be the final answer that comes out of it.
Dude, if in 4 weeks we're still saying Bazinga, I'm the one that's on the wayside. I got to get on track.
Mifflin betting me to say Bazinga on cast, and now look, he played himself. Now all we're doing is saying Bazinga. Look, Gore, Solar Scarabs come into this game. They give Baronic the Giannis. Hurrywind over on the other side on the Tiamat. I think a lot of this game suddenly starts to roll through this mid lane. Think back to the Jade Dragons. One of the last times we saw them playing, they had to go against this Tiamat, and the Winions effectively won the game. Not effectively, they literally won the game against them. I mean, it just requires so much team cohesion on the other side, and moments like that to shot call and make split-second decisions on how to deal with things like that. PandaCat uses beads. Inbound blinks in early. Sanford Soccer looking for a little engagement here in the mid lane. As Layers finds big damage, Sanford Soccer dashes in to all the damage there. Hurrywind returns a little bit himself as well. Layers left with a little bit more HP than his counterpart over on the Susano.
But to keep it back in
Oh, no!
contact, although no,
Oh,
Layers
no!
going in and doesn't get the kill though. Sam just barely teleports out. Baronic doesn't seem to have the abilities to close the gap. That honestly might come back to be very important. I think Layers, especially on this Ratatosker, is going to be a lot more aggressive. But an early kill that get early pressure back onto the Tiamat, like you just said, the Dragons having just lost to those minions. I had to pull it out. I'll give them the shout out afterward, but 4,562 points of damage is how much the Tiamat minions did to the Titan that game. And the minions did the other 6,000.
Oh no, SOT nearly gets the solo kill on Fine OK. And Gormizer, that's a stat. What do you say, 4,562? Sorry, I'm going to make you pull it back up. 4,000 something.
4,562.
Damn, good memory by me. You said it like 12 seconds ago, so I should remember that. But I think clearly showing how much damage those minions can do if given the opportunity. Panda Cat has to impale this Uller away. Zapman hits the stun from range. Inbound needs a little bit more, but instead Zapman's got it. And that is what this lane was built to do. A Hercules and an Uller brought together. They're always going to have that pressure.
That's deadly. I mean, it is very scary to think of just like a single knockup from inbound here. I mean, you would think that PBM of all people, and the same thing for Panda Cat, will understand what this lane's trying to do. They're the kind of guys that would run that down, and were running that kind of thing last year. So if inbound can keep up that amount of pressure, that is a great way to control the duo lane. And then that jumps immediately into pretty much the entire left side jungle. I mean, purple buffs, red buffs, invades like that should become a little more commonplace. Thank you, Zapman, for helping me prove my point. That's exactly the kind of thing you get with just a single kill over on that side, let alone when you're able to do it with an enhanced buff. You get a Scorpion. All of a sudden, there's a Gold Fury that's under the conversation, under the microscope here. I think this is a good turnaround. A completely different play style for Bobby to pick up for inbound here, but I do think it's going to be one that fits this team and, honestly, his aggression pretty well.
With, though, the Hercules pickup as well as SOT on the King Arthur, it's something that the desk brought up there, Gore. The quad physical damage coming out from the Solar Scarabs here. Does that raise some level of concern here for you? The Jade Dragons being able to itemize a little bit heavier into physical defense as this game goes on.
It is going to be a little worrisome, especially because, like, physical defense, especially early on, like, it's just one of the better ones to have in SMITE. Or at least it used to be, like, the best. Now it's a little more equal back and forth, but there is still, I think, a little bit more of an ease of access for Fine OK specifically. I think a lot of the warrior items give a little more physical protections, just kind of shifted around in there. So that's going to help him out, but at the end of the day, you're not worried too much. Like, Zapman should have a lot of pin towards the end of this, or at least enough pin that he's not going to be too threatened by it. Layers might suffer a little bit in terms of his damage, but then your worst case scenario is Baronic hits harder. I think it's no matter what a win-win scenario. Either you force them into a place where your mid laner gets to look better, or you force them into a place where you're doing the same damage you would normally. So no matter what, I think the Scarabs aren't going to be at a deficit here. And look at this, I just kind of a slow gold lead that's been steadily falling into their pockets. I think that they've been doing, again, a very good job. That first blood bounty accounts for some of that, but everything else has just been going because of the way they're controlling this game. And that's where I think inbound and Layers are going to be able to come through. If they can continue this pace and maybe even step it up a notch, get some more kills on the board, then I think this is going to be a game where the Dragons are going to be the ones looking like the Scarabs did in Game 1.
Agreed. I want to see what happens over in the solo lane, Gore, as this game goes on. We're not going to get a chance to look over there, though, as Layers barely makes it up into the sky from the mid lane through space and time, flies through, and inbound flies up. Hurrywind picks up the first return kill of the game, and the Jade Dragons now on the board. And that was dangerously close to being a two-kill swing. Layers, got to imagine, double-digit HP there, getting up into the ultimate now.
I think those moments where I'm going back to what I just said, maybe not quite that aggressive, right? Like, I think there's a lot of merit for what they just tried to do, but like you said, barely getting out of there, good retaliation by the Dragons to be that present. And that's where ward coverage comes in. Actually, right now, I'm even more surprised to find out most of the ward coverage, on the left-hand side at least, is going to be from the Scarabs. They've got a lot of good vision, mainly around mid-camps, a little bit there for duo, but they had dropped a ward deep onto the red buff to get the timer. Unfortunately for them, right next to that timer, you might see it looks a little wonky. It's because there's a red ward dropped under that as well. The Dragons had the vision on them going up through there. That's the kind of things, again, you just have to be a little worried about it if you're the Scarabs. There's a certain level of aggression that I think is warranted here. Not enough that I'm stressing out for them. Again, look, they've almost pushed that lead up to 2,000 despite getting killed. So I'm not really that worried about them. If they can just keep up what they've been doing, things should look good.
Layer spotted out over on the right-hand side of the map. The Ratatoskers looked good so far. Early damage, I mean, this is almost a non-factor, but early damage onto Sanford Soccer there in the mid lane. You can see what this Ratatosker can do once the stun and the damage start to connect. PBM looking for the leap on in. Layers will survive, and he will walk himself away. Now, the dynamic of the jungle, Gore, feels so different maybe between the two junglers, where Sanford Soccer walks in, has that close-range teleport, can get in and do a good bit of dueling, good bit of damage in that way. Whereas Layers with that semi-global presence, you look for him to make an impact early on, maybe from afar here in this game. The Ratatosker definitely has a lot of weight that it carries with it because of the abilities baked into that kit.
Like you said, a lot further away engage potential than what you're like. Sam, his blink is the range, right? Like he can blink over the wall and all of a sudden, cool, now he's in the engagement and that can surprise you, but you could see a lot more from Layers. They blink plus that ultimate. He can effectively traverse, I'd argue, 60% of the map with that pretty easily and not worry too bad about it. And I think there's a lot of potential for ganks on mid. Tiamat doesn't necessarily have a lot of safety, although pretty tanky in terms of when she goes into her ground form, as well as the fact that she has a small leap. Even though it's small, a leap's a leap. It's going to be able to get you away, so maybe not the easiest target on her. Has a leap. Kukulkan is Kukulkan, so it's going to be difficult no matter what to get a lot of pressure over there in solo. I think there's a lot of opportunities that Layer might have, but I kind of like this pace a little bit more. Like, you know, if you can't set up kills for yourself or for others, just farm, figure out what you can do. Maybe get aggressive into their jungle, force a fight, but do it with Baronic, with inbound around. There's a little bit of openings, but I think it's going to be surrounded by teamwork right now, this mid 3v3 for the Scarabs.
Worth mentioning the mental fortitude that it requires to bounce back after a game like you had in game number 1. And the Solar Scarabs have done that. They've turned around sets like that before, where they go down early in a big way, early on in the set, I should say, as they just have. And the fact that they're kind of slowly maintaining this gold lead over the Jade Dragons hasn't gotten any bigger, hasn't gotten any lower, and you wonder, Gore, how much that starts to play into their mentality, where you know what just happened in game 1, you know what happens when you give the Jade Dragons the slightest opportunity back into the game. You wonder if you're like, all right, look, we've got a 1.7k gold lead, we've got a 1-level lead in the jungle, a 1-level lead in mid, 1 level over in Hunter as well. Let's not rock that boat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Keep things steady as you can. Again, the trajectory that the Scarabs have been on here has been a lot cleaner for them overall. And they've been able to find picks, almost locking down Mike there for a second. But, I mean, what was almost 2,000 gold, still kind of hanging around that almost 2,000 gold mark. It's been a couple of bounce backs. I think like maybe 100 gold from the last time I looked up there for the Dragons, but still steadily rising. I mean, like you have to look at the grand scheme of things, right? Across 10 minutes, it has been trajectory upwards for the Scarabs. Now, it's still shakeable. That's, I think, the scary part, right? When you've got a lead, you're feeling pretty comfortable about it. Like you said, you've got this level lead, and it transcends into the gold lead as well. But a Gold Fury takes that all away from you.
Right.
And it kicks it right out from underneath you. And so I think the Scarabs are going to have to start with worrying about the map. It's kind of frightening to take the Greater Scorpion here, because you take the Scorpion, if you lose a fight, you're out.
Could be a fight around the purple buff here. Sanford Soccer and Hurdiwin make their way from the mid lane. Zapman will leap away. He uses the beads, but he'll survive. Now Final K being dove beneath the tier 1 tower over on the right-hand side. SOT doesn't have the damage as Final K lets out a roar, and the King Arthur chops down Kukulkan. And the Solar Scarabs have finally pushed that advantage to something other than a blue buff invade over there on the right-hand side. It was playing with fire for a while there, it seemed like, for Final K. Now SOT finds himself 2 levels ahead.
What I'm learning is that you don't want to be on my milestone list. Final K was the player I was going to call out here. SOT was it last time. Final K is about 4 kills away, if you can find him here, from getting his 1,000th career kill.
Oh,
that's a
very
big monumental. Yeah, Zapman, I will, like, not to belittle Final K here. Zapman's about 30 or so away from potentially getting his 2,000th. Harkening for a good set, maybe a good couple of weeks for him, depending on how this set goes, because if they can bounce it back here, and again, to bounce it back to the last time they played the Dragons, they lost game 1 there, they won games 2 and 3. They're still looking at a pretty comfy spot, and actually putting the Dragons as the one that could get knocked out.
Gore, you know what I would love? So, you know, the NFL happens, quarterback throws his, like, 1,000th career touchdown. Yeah. Everyone kind of takes a pause. The whole crowd like applauses them. They get to keep their game
ball. They all have to stop.
They all stop. the Jade, you look at their player cams, the Jade Dragons are all like 11 on fine, okay, and the Scarabs are just playing because they have no idea what's going on. I'd like to see something like that happen. I'm sure the Jade Dragons wouldn't. But yeah, let's see if we can
What do you
celebrate.
mean? You don't think they'd like to just stop playing
The
middle of
game.
it?
I'm just saying, I think there could be some humor involved there if you're anyone other than the Jade Dragons throwing maybe a bit of a lead away.
Look, if they had the lead from game 1, they'd do it.
Correct. No, I think that's fair. Although, some of the players on Twitter, Gores, you've shouted out their milestones, haven't even realized that they're in those spots. PBM probably didn't realize that he was in a bit of danger here as SOT and the rest of the gang closed the gap in on PBM. And what a world of difference this Fafnir has felt like it's had in game number 2 as opposed to game number 1. At this point, PBM was effectively running down anyone that he wanted on the Solar Scarabs. Now finds himself even, which is bad compared to game number 1 with Inbound over on the other side.
I'd actually say, like, a lot of credit. PBM's been playing well, but Inbound's just been playing out of his mind on this Hercules. Like, he's been able to get a lot of pressure over here, a lot of zoning. I mean, look, he's confident enough to back in the Dragon's jungle right now. Granted, he's maybe not that deep, but still, right next to their red buff, like, that is not territory that you're supposed to be confident in. I think between that and what we just saw with that rotation from SOT, this King Arthur is going to be an absolute well, I keep saying menace. I'm going to stop saying menace, but a terror that comes through. Just any word that J. Jonah Jameson would use to describe Spider-Man, that's how I would describe this King Arthur going forward. Potentially it's Hercules as well. It's just a lot to worry about, I think, if you're the Dragons. That's a devastating front line.
Well, Zapman has to leap away here. Great pillar from Panda Cat. Maybe just forces enough of a sidestep from this Uller, but it does not. PBM unable to provide the last bit of utility or damage to grab the kill onto Zapman. Now the Uller 2 levels ahead of Panda Cat over there on the other side. Interesting, though, Gore, our data pool on Uller, admittedly, is pretty small here throughout the SPL. Are you worried at all as this game goes on? I don't know. I hesitate to call him traditional Hunter, and I might be able to form my thoughts a little bit better as this purple buff invade continues on here. Inbound looking for the knockback, won't find it. Onto Panda Cat, and they will indeed walk away. How do you imagine, though, this Uller transitions into this team fight phase compared to something like the Anher?
Honestly, like, I like Anher's ult a lot. I think it brings a lot, even after the nerfs that it received relatively recently. I think Anher's pillar brings a lot, and there's a ton that Anher does that's maybe subtle and a little more difficult to notice in the middle of a team fight, but you feel everything Uller does. He's got a leap for engage, but more than disengage. He's got a speed up to, as well, disengage. But axe stun into hail of arrows as well as his piercing shot, like, all of the damage Uller can do in just a matter of a second is ridiculous to deal with. And so while it might not be as long sustained damage overall in terms of burstability, I think he's going to be able to hit people real hard with those, just his 1-3 combo.
Right, it's a big flurry of damage there. Gold Fury looked at, and this is an important one, isn't it? Solar Scarabs have slowly built up about a 2,500 gold lead. But the Gold Fury is the big one in the early game to stabilize that lead if you're the Jade Dragons, if you're able to get in, steal that away. But it looks like the opposite. It looks like the Solar Scarabs are going to continue pushing the advantage, and Bobby drops the boulder, layers drops down, gets a kill on the Panda Cat as well, and the duo lane for the Dragons is off the map.
I mean, night and day, right? This is exactly what was being done to the Scarabs. Granted, maybe one more kill earlier on for the Dragons, but the Scarabs have been able to take the reins of this game from the get-go, and they are controlling it. They get that Gold Fury. Like you said, they were a little over a Gold Fury up. Now they're 2 technically Gold Furies up because they got that, but the gold lead going to be a lot more comfortable in their pockets. Items should start be finishing 3,600 gold, but it's 55-ish 100 experience. That's going to be the big number, because if they can keep that on their side, that's a level in mid. It's 2 levels there for the Hunters. You've got 1 for your support, 1 for your solo laner. Yes, Layers, oh no, is on par with Sam. I don't think he's necessarily crying about it. I think this is a really good spot for him.
No.
If they can continue this. Again, just this amount of pressure. Don't let up. Take the purple buffs. If you can, take red buffs. Do anything without jeopardizing your lead. And let Inbound and Solo or Troll, when he does join these fights, just be the ones kind of driving it. Let him play this Hercules the way we've seen it played Season 7, all of Season 7, where it was very successful. I think this is a chance to showcase not only what Hercules can do in this meta, but also just what Inbound is capable of, since sometimes if it seems very hot or cold, not necessarily for him, just for the Scarabs as a whole.
Agreed. And Gore, early on here in this game, well, I say early, we're 15:45 into it, you can see some Tiamat minions working their way down the mid lane. You wonder how much of an impact that Tiamat split push will have as this game goes on. Maybe feels good if you're a little bit behind in a game like this. You can push out a wave without having to fully be there, and then the Solar Scarabs have to reply to it. Definitely the Jade Dragons, at least as of right now, in 16 minutes, won't be in a position to send minions down a lane and grab Phoenixes, grab Titans. That's way later on into the game where you're looking at something like that. But could make a difference. Give the Jade Dragons a foothold back into this game as far as map control goes. Haven't quite seen it here just yet. Hurryone just doing his best at this point to keep up and farm with Barana, continue building into some of that burst. Got himself Charon's coin, Soul Gem, trying to maintain relevancy as this game goes on.
Did I miss something Layers did? He was 13-13 a second ago. Now he's 15-13 all of a sudden.
My man, power farm.
Yeah, dude, he came out and he went big in terms of his farm. Definitely something I expect to see come into the equation here, right? He's got his full Acorn off. He's been able to get the Crusher as well as his Void Shield now online. And we talked about him a lot early on. He, again, doesn't necessarily feel like he's going to be able to get as much done as he would like standard jungle play, but I'm going to give him a lot of credit. His zoning capabilities as well as the backline drop down that he's going to be able to have with that ult available makes him a big threat. Plus, having a level up on Sam makes it a little more open-ended as to whether or not the conversation can be had to who's going to be able to make a bigger splash for them. I'm liking it. Look, the Scarabs front line right now looks really good. I wish we could see, for me, I just want more fights. But that is something that I think both of these teams want to slow down on.
Inbound wants some more fighting as well. He'll blink over the wall beneath the tier 2 tower. The Aegis, perfect from PandaCat, but is it enough? No, it is not. Zapman guns him down nonetheless. PBM will transform. Bye-bye. Zapman double kill over in the duo lane. That one brought to you for free by Inbound.
I mean, I love the fact. It's like he was listening to me. I call it out. He goes in, recognizes what he needs to do. Blink is going to be on cooldown. He manages to live through that one. Kind of low, though. So Sam might have the opportunity, with that teleport, at least to scare them, put some fright in there. But a tier 2 over on left before tier 1s fall anywhere else. Now look, if you're looking for pressure on an Oni Fury coming up, that's about the best you can do. If Phoenix is exposed as well, it makes it even easier for him as time goes forward.
Wow.
But now with SOT and Find OK joining this, at least these side skirmishes, these fights, could start opening up more conversations. Pyromancer's still available. That's at least a small avenue. The Dragons can kind of tick on a consolation prize at this point. I think this Oni Fury is going to be a very big pivot point. If the Scarabs get that and cement their lead even further, we're going to be going back to the conversations we were having last game, except it's going to be the Dragons in the seat that are like, man, well, maybe you can get a Gold Fury, maybe you can get a Fire Giant, but as of right now, they're still just on that precipice where they can team fight, just not quite as cleanly and not as smoothly as I'm sure they would like.
It's not as dramatic of a lead, that's for sure,
yes,
but it's still a beefy lead for the Solar Scarabs nonetheless. That's why you start to see this team push their way towards the right-hand side of the map. Maybe about 1 minute left before that Oni Fury respawns. Minute and a half at most. Pyromancer gets taken down by the Solar Scarabs. Still would be very early on and not a crazy enough lead for the Solar Scarabs to go all in, maybe, on this Oni Fury. Instead, they're going all in for where they thought was PandaCat. And the back will be successful. Look, Gore, I think you have to admire the attempt there. A little bit wide. You're hoping that PandaCat's backing in the middle of the lane there. Instead, he's a bit further out.
You got to keep it 100%. Every hunter walks back from that position. They almost always do. Like, they will get to the tier 1 tower line, and then they take 10 steps back, and then they back up. And so where he shot that, at least from Baronix, should have connected, I think, on pretty much anybody else. PandaCat backing where he was. And let's be honest, if that had worked out, that would have been a sick play from the Scarabs. Because, look, you get that kill, you bounce immediately into an Oni Fury, and things are going cleanly, smoothly for you. The fact that it doesn't work isn't detrimental. I mean, oh, boo-hoo, you don't get another kill. That's about the worst of it. Panda's already 0-3-0. It's not like you're necessarily putting more things into the dirt. He's not very successful right now. They're just locking him out. They get a TKO with his back, and guess what? They still get the Oni Fury.
They sure do. Now it's level 19. For this Ullr. SOT has quietly continued his onslaught over on the right-hand side of the map, almost level 20 for him there as well. The good news is for the Jade Dragons, you have to continue to find these silver linings. You're pretty far behind in gold here at this point in the game, almost exactly 6,000. But in that XP area, Gore, it is not the same discrepancies that we were seeing in Game 1. We were talking 3, 4, 5 levels of difference between some players on the Scarabs and their counterparts on the Jade Dragons. At this point, 1 level, 2 in support, and Hunter is really the most dramatic. So if the Jade Dragons can find a way to not play around Zapman and Inbound, which seems pretty impossible here at this point, given the way Inbound is playing,
yeah,
maybe it doesn't feel quite as bad to fight. But I say maybe that heavily because the way Inbound is playing right now, he's going to force his way into any of these fights. Right? I don't know if the Jade Dragons are going to have the chance to choose whether or not they play around this Hercules and this Uller.
I'd say 80% of the time he's the one making the fight. So yeah, it's definitely going to be difficult for him. There's the Dragons to try and figure out where they're not going to be. Even here, leading the force is going to be Solar Troll and Inbound, and he's going to be going, if that connects, I mean, maybe on to Fine OK, it's not going to be as devastating, but PandaCat PBM at this point, not as tanky as he'd like to be at that Sovereignty, could be pretty easy kills. But Yui had hearkened onto this earlier. Physical defense for him means that technically it's going to be a little more difficult for the Scarabs to do that damage. But then you look at Zap's build, that screams like it's going to be a tank killer build, especially since he's going for a mace as opposed to going for any crit. And as long as Crusher picked up for layers, like there's just enough pin, I think, everywhere, at least on the people who are going to need to be doing the damage for me. And I'm not too worried about what they're picking up here, and I think the Dragons, they're finding themselves in a very awkward spot against the wall.
They sure are. And now when we're 22 minutes into this game, this is the area where you start to look towards something like an FG, especially given Zapman's build and the shred that they have available on some of these bigger objectives now at this stage in the game. Jade Dragons are just going to have to sacrifice parts of their jungle at this point. It seems like they're going to have to back away from most of these towers. First real look at a Tiamat minion split push happening over on the right-hand side of the map right now. So Hurrywind has dropped some of those minions down. Somebody from the Solar Scarabs is going to have to go over there in response. This one probably quiet, though, all things considered, Gore. You don't immediately see this big grouping and push somewhere from the Jade Dragons. Looks like Baronic will just be able to rotate over and clean up these minions. But again, that's what I'm thinking you may have to start looking out for if you're the Solar Scarabs. If that's in a moment where the Dragons are over by an objective and a fight is happening, you can't quite afford to send Baronic over.
Look, it will take a while for it to happen, but we've seen it happen where Tiamat minions can push down into the base. I think that's something, like you said, something you're going to have to be very aware of. And right now, at least for the Dragons, the way they're playing this, especially with the Scarabs starting this up, it's to play defense. It's to stop the pressure on the left side Phoenix.
We'll see how much damage Zapman can do to this FG. About half of its health is the answer, but here comes the fight from the Solar Scarabs. It's a dunk down from layers, and it's an immediate kill onto PandaCat. A perfect target now for this Scarabs team. SOT will dash away from the fight. Inbound underneath the tier 2 tower. He'll survive somehow, and now Fine OK given a chance to turn this fight around as a volley of damage flies in from the backline. Sanford Soccer deleted by Zapman. This Uller worth his weight in gold. It's a double kill from Zapman, and the Solar Scarabs win another one.
Yeah, you can't underestimate the Zuler, and I think that's what Zapman's showing off here. 5-0. Number 4 on the damage charts, just barely behind the solo laners in the mid laner there. Baronic doing a ton. You want a free Fire Giant? There's 3 people down. Hurrywind does not scream as the person, at least in my mind, who's going to walk up and try and steal this one away. And look, even though Hurry had put those minions on left, they still have a minion wave up there right next to the Phoenix. Exposed Phoenix, furthest from the Fire Giant, plus the Fire Giant now on their side. I don't know, this is starting to feel like a pretty big equation for success from the Scarabs.
Yeah, Gore, I think it's a bit written in the stars now how the Solar Scarabs will look to play the next couple of minutes. Tier 1 and Tier 2 remaining in mid lane, so you want to get those free pockets of gold as long as you possibly can. Now the Tier 2 tower in mid will fall. The Jade Dragons have a big decision to make here. How hard are you going to try to defend this Tier 2 on right? The answer was already there in mid, and it was not at all.
Yeah.
Maybe you're rolling the dice then under one of your Phoenixes.
I mean, like you said, experience, at least at this point, you can start to chop away and not worry too much about it, but you've got a level 20 to level 18 in the jungle, level 20 to 19. Like, there's still enough discrepancies, 3 levels there in support. PBM getting a taste of his own medicine in this case. It's going to be very difficult to bounce back. I think I have to go stand by you on this one, which is that Tier 2. Look, if the Scarabs want it, they get it. I don't care about it. It doesn't exist to me because it's not going to exist long enough for us to care, right? So I think they have to start looking towards these Phoenixes. Specifically, again, Hurwind's minions, wherever those Tiamat minions are on the map, is going to be able to help alleviate some of the pressure for the Dragons. It's going to push, ideally, a wave 2, 3, if they can get their way, before having to stress out too much about it. Can let them focus on saving these left and mid Phoenixes because right lane's going to be pretty safe. But this is a very, very scary scenario if you're a Dragons player or fan at this point. 0-8-1 combined for the duo lane. Like, they haven't been able to get a lot done. PBM and PandaCat are in this very tumultuous spot of how do you engage when you're the ones
don't know if they can.
continually getting demolished. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you can. I think right now, the best bet is honestly more or less to hope for Inbound to make a mistake. The problem is we've gone 26 minutes in here and he hasn't been making a ton.
Here's the thing. I mean, it feels like Inbound has such a high level of cushion given the 4-level lead he has over PBM. His mistake has been, I'm going to blink it and miss a pull and then turn around and walk away. He hasn't been punished for missing any of those big committal engages so far. It feels like on this Hercules, going to be difficult to survive this siege when Zapman is chipping away at the Phoenix the way he is, unless you can find a big chain CC like that, and the Jade Dragons find Zapman with a 1-2-3 punch of crowd control. Now over in the mid lane, San Francisco has to leave, but SOT says no way, the DOT will get that one done. But look at the health bars of the Jade Dragons. Gore certainly not healthy in the back line.
And now it's going to be up. Layers is on this guy, but they're going to go back in on the Heroin.
Baronic left alone outside of the wall here. Final K should chase this one down with the portal. Keeps Baronic alive, and Inbound once again drops the boulder. This time onto the Jade Dragons mid laner. Final K finally will pick up the kill with the assist of the mid lane Phoenix there. And now the Solar Scarabs down to 2 inside of the base of the Jade Dragons. Inbound left alone here with 3 of the Solar Scarabs, unless someone steps on that door panel. Well, it gets opened up for Inbound there, and plenty tanky enough is this Hercules. So it is a Phoenix siege repelled by the Jade Dragons.
It takes a little longer for him to disengage, but they get the 2 important members, right? Fire Giant left on, admittedly, the front lines. Feels nice in the sense that they can sustain up. I don't think Inbound was ever worried about getting out there, but Zapman not having it means that those Phoenixes are probably going to be laid by the wayside. There's only 30 seconds left on the buff anyway, so it's not necessarily the end-all, be-all. Baronic not having it. Look, and Baronic tried his best to get out of there. That was a really good portal. And just an unfortunate scenario to walk back through. Not a lot of options for him or avenues out. Now they're right back where they were before, although the Dragon's getting a couple of kills. That's going to close up some of those gaps that existed prior. There's still build gaps that are going to be problematic for the Dragons. That man inherently is going to be able to fire more autos off. That Odysseus' bow specifically has been a very big pain in past metas because of how much damage you don't realize you're taking from lightning bounces from the backline. I think that those are going to definitely start to showcase and kind of shake their head out towards the Dragons. But the good news is that they're still alive in this one. Like you said, they repelled over the Phoenixes, showcasing that even if they lose this next Fire Giant, assuming it goes down, and it's going to have to get burned fast for it to go down here, but if it goes down before 30, that opens up a lot more ease of access for the Dragons to find a defense. But if I'm the Scarabs, not only do I have control of this side of the map already, good ward coverage plopping out onto the right-hand side.
Ooh.
I wait the, 30 seconds, minute maybe, that the Fire Giant's going to be available, I think a little less, and let it get to that EFG status just so we know we're confident in terms of capabilities.
Look at this. The Jade Dragons send the Tiamat minions down the left-hand side. They were attempting to set up a trap, see which member of the Solar Scarabs rotated over to deal with the minions, but nobody did. And in exchange, the Solar Scarabs send everyone over to the right-hand side. PBM alone with the entirety of the Solar Scarabs roster. Let's see what type of a call the Jade Dragons make here. They're looking towards the Tier 2 tower as the Fire Giant is respawning. Panda Cat channeling his back here. Layers is as well. And it looks like that's maybe slowed down the Fire Giant, but not completely stopped it. Zapman is still here with Inbound. There's plenty of damage between those two to get this one done, especially with SOT playing Separator. PBM might have to just try to weave in a hammer at some type of steal, but SOT doing so much damage, Gore. Looks like this one goes for free to the Scarabs.
It's something, I like the way the Dragons tried to play that, at least get the Fakies, see if they can pull back more than 2 members, but there's no need to. If you're the Scarabs, you've got such a lead right now, and you deal with that wave pretty handily, and you're not stressed out about it. Yeah, you can ignore the experience, although that's a lot in their favor. 14K, I believe is what I saw coming up onto them, and soon enough at this rate, won't be surprised if they hit the 20,000 mark. 4-0-5 for SOT. This King Arthur has been problematic, continues to be problematic, and I think will continue to be problematic as time goes forward, because this is just something that they've been having trouble dealing with, even right there. Like, solo laners typically beat people up a lot, or at least box each other a lot in lane, so their damage always tends to skyrocket above everybody else. But 15,000 player damage right now. SOT was the one who took PBM to half health there during that Fire Giant. Like, that is where a lot of these plays are being made, is in the front line for the Scarabs. And Zapman, look, Zapman's 5-1-0. He is doing a lot of damage. Baronic is doing a lot of damage, almost 12,000 on him, but it is going to be created, all of this space at least for them to operate, is Inbound and SOT really making a fine work of the Dragons here. And so the Dragons are going to go for this defense once again to see if they can find it around the Phoenixes.
Hariwin sends his minions down the right-hand side, so that is at least one lane that the Dragons don't have to worry about for a little while. Instead, the left side has got to be where all the concerns are. Inbound blinks in, looks for the engage, gets dispelled by the rest of the Jade Dragons. As the minions continue to work down right. Looks like maybe a Tier 2 tower goes down under the threat of the waves pushing out from the Jade Dragons over there. So the Solar Scarabs looking to make their move on the other side of the map here. Inbound looking for the pull yet again, but comes up just short this time. Pillar goes up from Panicat. And Zapman's got to be cautious this time. You got to imagine the last Phoenix Siege goes better if that chain of CC doesn't connect onto the Uller, but over in the mid lane, Sanford Soccer and Layers dueling out. Typhoon flies through, Layers up into the sky, looking for the drop down, and he's got it. The 1v1 in mid could go over to Layers, and Layers has got it.
That's one of those awkward choices where you either have to turn around and hope for the best if you're Sam. I think cooldown's not opting to be in his favor, whereas Layers getting a little bit more of an edge on that one. Gets to maintain his life, still low in terms of health, but Fire Giant Sustain should help with that. But that's now free pressure that he has in mid.
Sure is. His Fine OK down to half HP. Inbound gets chipped away at as well. Update on the right-hand side. Tier 2 tower still standing. No threat there against the Solar Scarabs. Finally, the left side Phoenix will go down. And the rest of the Solar Scarabs working into the base of the Jade Dragons. 30 seconds left without Sanford Soccer, but the health bars are low. Half HP on most of the Solar Scarabs members. And the Jade Dragons can maybe take advantage of that. SOT left alone here, attempting to escape. And the Solar Scarabs will take left Phoenix, mid Phoenix, and get out alive.
I like the call, though. I mean, get out while you still can, right? Inbound precariously low. And it looks like PBM maybe getting too aggressive. This is actually bad territory to be in. Zapman full health and still hanging around. That could have ended up pretty badly had some CC chains landed on Mike, but luckily for him, he gets to maintain this one. Fire Giant still has a little under a minute. I mean, maybe enough time to go up there and knock down that Tier 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a little bit more chillax from the Scarabs for a little bit longer. Just settling themselves, figuring out the map, looking at the gold lead, 20,000 by the way. They've hit that mark finally. And trying to figure out where to go next. I mean, it's this awkward moment in SMITE, right? Like, you have 1:30 left before the Fire Giant respawns. That means 30 seconds left.
You sure don't want to die.
That it's
right?
there. You don't want to die. There's no Oni Fury. There's no Pyromancer. There's no Fire Giant.
They're just kicking our feet up,
Where
right?
do I
We're
go?
chilling.
What do I do? And I guess
Whoa,
the answer is fight!
They want to fight! Layers up into the ultimate, will not dunk down onto anyone, but he is in the back line. He has found Panicat, who uses the Aegis, and the Aegis will keep the her alive just a little bit longer, but the damage is there, and Panicat will survive the onslaught. Inbound quite low here. SOT stunned against the wall, uses the beads. Final K had been left alone in the back line, gets pulled back in by Inbound, but Final K survives. Panicat turns it around and finally gets the kill, and the solo laner of the Dragons goes down as well. Oh, no. This is a big fight for the Jade Dragons, surging down the left-hand side.
Layers is low, Zap is low, Inbound. Look, he might have a lot of health. That Shield of Regrowth is going to be putting in a lot of work for him over the next little bit, but if they can close the gap, it doesn't look like they'll be able to. The Dragons at least give themselves a lot of space, but Dave, I'm in a really in-between spot. Look how much damage at least these minions are going to be able to do. They're going to cause a lot of trouble and wreak havoc over in the base, but I see boulders available for Inbound, and I don't think even with 2 kills, even with them out 30 more seconds, but and that Fire Giant should be spawning up in that time, I don't know if you have enough secure on the side of the Dragons to really feel confident getting aggressive onto the Fire Giant.
Desert Fury will be up here in a little while. Sanford Soccer halfway to his Typhoon. PBM won't have the Coerce, at least on the Transform. Won't have the Coerce on the Transform. Have it in the base form to get his teams there. You do have the numbers advantage, though, Gormizer. Veronic will have the through space and time. If you connect for some damage, that'll also open up some portals for the rest of your team, meaning SOT to get into the fight. Looks like King Arthur will take the normal long way to get there. And the Jade Dragons will back away. Still Fire Minions on the left. Still Fire Minions in mid. Tiamat Minions connecting with the Fire Minions on the left-hand side, but the Fire Minions are winning that battle. So the Solar Scarabs definitely have this wave pressure that the Dragons eventually are going to have to go back and deal with.
That's those minions. I mean, Tiamat minions help level out some of the playing field, at least in left. They were there for a second. So luckily that means they only have to worry about defending technically mid. This is a good spot for the Dragons to be in, and that's about all you can say about this. I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities that you'll be 20,000 gold down and find anyone saying you're in a good spot for it. But this is about as even as you can get, and the best bet that you could probably get for a Fire Giant fight. 35 minutes in, I really like the chances they have, but you have to be careful. Watch for inbound, watch for SOT. Same thing for the Scarabs. I mean, the last fight they had was a little bit of an overextension. Veronic has that through space and time. That's been their engage for the last few of these fights. Could be a pretty easy tier 2, but I'm a little worried about the follow-up, and specifically what the Scarabs are going to do. I don't want them to get too overzealous.
Sanford Soccer making the decision, saving our left side Phoenix as it respawns against the Fire Minions. More important than being on the right-hand side. Frenzy gets popped here. Zapman gets popped here. Layers nearly dies as well. Inbound, turns tail. Veronic goes back through on the back line, and it's a double kill now for Panda Cat. It is 1 minute death timers for 3 members of the Solar Scarabs.
I mean, look, you're probably going to lose your mid Phoenix again thanks to Fire Minions.
Inbound.
If I'm looking at it, well, inbound. If he gets
they're going to get it anyway, right? I mean,
you're going to, but now is this a good fight, bad fight? He might actually be able to kill Sam here with the proper minions and damage the boulder. Not on the mark, but I don't know if you run into the base here.
Look at the Jade Dragons reply, though, Goremizer. It's the right side.
They're going to get a Phoenix.
The right side tier 2 gets looked at. PBM, D transforms back in a normal old Fafnir. Panda Cat is with this team. It is still 20 seconds on the respawn timers for 3 members of the Solar Scarabs. Layers is back. Inbound is back as well. The Phoenix gets taken down by the Jade Dragons as the Tiamat minions providing some support here. It's a double push back from inbound. PBM throws a hammer by the wayside, and the Jade Dragons are in onto the Titan, and the Titan is melting quickly. The Jade Dragons have found their opening. The Jade Dragons are looking for it, but Layers has gotten the kill on the Panda Cat. The best target he could have found. PBM gets melted down on the back. Inbound's got one as well. The Jade Dragons are falling. The respawns are in, and the Solar Scarabs stay alive.
Look at Sam, though. Look at Sam. He's hovering around in the jungle. He's got some minions over here on right. Like, this is a very essential moment. That Titan is low. Is it low enough for him to kill? I have no idea, but watch the through space and time. The Scarabs know what their goal is, and they're trying to get into the base soon.
This is the only chance the Dragons have at winning this game is Sanford Soccer going into the base and killing the Titan before the Solar Scarabs are able to do so. 4 members of the Solar Scarabs into the mid lane. Sanford Soccer and Layers dueling it out over here in the Solar Scarabs base. Sanford Soccer sends the Typhoon in onto the Titan. He's dealing enough damage, but he dashes away. Layers has got the kill, and the Solar Scarabs got the win in game number 2.
What a way to give me a heart attack there. Both of these teams, I don't understand. I don't know where he's going. I love that he goes in. That ult, not quite enough damage for him. But I like the play from Sam. Like, if you're going to go for it, they're going to go all in on that one. But the Scarabs, look, that one is a good, 30-plus minute game into a really, really unfortunate 30 seconds towards the very end, or 40 seconds there in that fight around the Fire Giant. Things go wrong almost too much.
How many eyes does Khepri have? Does he only have 2? This bit might literally make no sense in that case. I was gonna say get bugged and flip these up.
Look, I know a lot of weird Smite stats. I cannot tell you how many eyes Khepri has.
All right, well, I'm gonna stick with it. Game 2, the Scarabs say, get bugged. We'll see you right after this for game 3.
SPL powered by Alienware. Tell you what, the players needed every ounce of that Alienware power to deliver us that last game. Of course, you too can get your hands on some of that Alienware power by going to smitegame.com/Alienware and using code SMITEAW in order to secure the best deals that you can get, including something like this laptop, which will shortly be on my desk at home. Taco, this game was unbelievable. I mean, the Scarabs get off to this big lead. We keep thinking, okay, it's there, but is it enough? Probably not. Okay, maybe it is. It looks like they start converting that lead. Then the Uller weakness comes through. Zap keeps getting picked. And you think, okay, the Dragons have done enough. A head-scratcher fight on the right side leads to the Jade Dragons being about to win. But then again, the Titan defense comes through. We've seen more Titan defense this phase than really any other time in Smite history, it feels like. What happened in that game?
The one thing that does reign true, Giannis is on a 100% win rate for today.
That is true.
And I'm not going to necessarily say that Giannis was, the winning element here for the Scarabs. There was definitely some rather questionable, Verani plays, but I'm sure he's probably kicking himself for a couple of those. But I definitely think that this is where we see that resilience. We asked for it before Game 2, and all things considered, I've never really been particularly keen on Uller, even in the given meta. I still don't think that it's truly a Bluestone meta as of yet, but for what it's worth, Zap definitely did a great job at establishing the lead that he needed to, and Panicat just full on got the ADC experience.
Man, he got the treatment this game. I'll tell you what, the Scarabs were hunting him early and often. The Scarabs played around this duo lane nicely. They got that first blood early on and then just kept it going. Panicat, I mean, this clip says it perfectly. He just got everything dumped on him in that fight, and that was really what he had to deal with all game long. This was the game plan, was to shut down PandaCat pretty clearly, and this dive from layers in SOT and inbound really was effective, but then all of a sudden it shouldn't have gone that way. I don't know what happened there, Taco. I don't know if you saw something that the Jade Dragons could have done differently in order to actually end the game properly right here.
This was just kind of a tough spot for the Dragons to be in. I think this comes down more so to just Bobby having a fantastic Herc pull that arguably might have been the difference maker for the Jade Dragons actually taking this set in 2-0 fashion. He just knew the target focus needed to come out onto those that would be dealing the most DPS to help try and burst down that Titan at the end. And that really was kind of just salvaged by inbound at the end there.
Great game on the Hercules for sure. 4-1-9 for him. Put out 12,000 player damage, certainly a respectable number. Hurwin doesn't find the win on the Tiamat, but certainly put out the damage significantly head and shoulders above everyone else in the match.
The problem for Hurry is that, yes, he was able to get his damage out there, but I think that when you look at Susano, you want that dive element to be an asset. And Susano as well, one of the better gods, I think, at chasing Giannis, but that front line was just so steep. Sam didn't really have as many options once that snowball effect started coming in, because I wouldn't say there was necessarily a massive lead outright, but it came down to the map pressure for me. It just felt like Solar Scarabs were constantly right place, right time, and a lot of those times it was, the complete opposite for PandaCat, where I don't even think he was necessarily that far out of position.
No?
He was just having a really bad day.
Well, hard to be in position against Ratatosk or Giannis. I mean, those are gods, King Arthur as well. I mean, those are gods that get on top of you very, very quickly, and they don't really care who's in between you and them. They're going to be able to get there either way. PandaCat certainly on the receiving end of that in game number 2. And with that, we head to game number 3. Very similar to the last time these two played, though game 2 was much more clean from the Scarabs in that set. Game 3 ended up looking quite a bit like what we just saw. So the Scarabs are in familiar territory now, and maybe some of those Jade Dragons players starting to think about how this is exactly how it happened last time.
It can for sure be a little bit of a momentum shift, and definitely a mental shift. As far as the Jade Dragons are concerned, they've already seen this play out in the past where they were on the losing end of things, and I'm sure it's not a place that they want to revisit. I definitely like the way that Sam and Fino were able to create a lot of space towards those later team fights, but I would definitely like to see Sam on something maybe a little bit more aggressive in the early game if you know that the focus from Scarabs is going to be just trying to run it down on one of the side lanes.
Agreed. I think that might be the direction the Jade Dragons decide to change things up. As the Scarabs are going to stick to their guns, it's been Chiron and Mercury bans really throughout. It was Gilgamesh in game number 2, in that third slot for them. We'll see if they want to continue that. As the Jade Dragons, remember, they were willing to make that trade last time around of giving up mid laner for mid laner, giving up that Giannis for the Tiamat. And for what it's worth, I think if I'm the Dragons, I wouldn't be too disinterested in making that trade once again. I don't think that you have to really be too concerned about it. Baronic had a good game, yes, but Hurwind also had a very good game. So I don't think you're really too stressed about it.
No, that one really came down to the wire for both of those teams, and especially for the Jade Dragons. I would probably agree with the sentiment that the Giannis, for sure, was causing a lot of issues for PandaCat, but I don't know that we necessarily saw as much of the mobility initiation factor from Baronic's Giannis. It definitely seemed a little bit more engaged towards personal peel and personal DPS output, but I do like the fact that he's running it bad because at the very least, it's an option to take away from Hurwin. You know the Jade Dragons are probably going to want to opt for it. So in a sense, because Solar Scarabs are refusing to ban the Giannis, I think that they just feel outright obligated to pick it up, and given the fact that it is one of Baronic's comfort picks since way upon a time ago,
yeah,
it just kind of makes sense.
Thought this might happen. Jade Dragons in this spot last time took Cucullin and then left that King Arthur for Solar Troll, who then proceeded to go have a really solid game on it. So instead they go with the King Arthur, and interestingly enough, they forego the Fafnir this time around. They've top-2'd Fafnir each of the last 2 games. This time, they elect to pick up that Danzaburrow.
PandaCat's sick of it. He wants to scrap, and one of the best ways that he's going to be able to do it is an aggressive god like Danzaburrow. I think it really fits his playstyle super well, and it's going to keep Zapman a little bit more on his toes. Danzaburrow also, arguably, slightly harder to gank and chase down as heavily as what we saw from the Honor, because yes, Honor does have CC immune on his ult. Yes, he can jump over walls in comparison to Danzaburrow, but having the ability to kind of hide where you might actually be throughout a fight is certainly, it has that element of surprise.
Wow, surprised here that was Ymir. I thought they're not picking Fafnir here because they know that they want to get PandaCat's pick top 3. They know he wants Danzaburrow. And we've got to keep that third slot open for a Tiamat. But they don't go with the Tiamat. They go with Ymir instead. And I wonder if the Solar Scarabs are even going to ban it. I mean, they banned Serket first and foremost.
Raijin? Possibly?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Raijin and Merlin still open, even if the Tiamat goes. But I think that would be surprising. The Solar Scarabs don't even throw a ban its way. I mean, like I said, it definitely took him a long time to get to that point where he was putting out the damage. But certainly was a huge part of those late-game fights being much more Jade Dragon's favor.
Those late-game fights, I think, were too much Jade Dragon's favor, and a lot of that could definitely be credited for the Tiamat and just the pressure and how much survivability she has as well. But this Thanatos pickup, it's something that we haven't seen from Sam in a while. I do like the flow of things so far, though, for Jade Dragons here, just because Ymir going to have great lockdown potential with that wall. Again, looking at characters, even the Anhur and the Hercules can kind of, like, Anhur might be able to jump over the wall initially, but he's fairly easy to catch out with slows, and he could definitely struggle throughout these engagements because I'm seeing a lot of space control right now from Jade Dragon's composition.
I think it's going to be an Willix pick here for layers. That's what it's looking like to me, just based on the Anhur Hercules tier on their side. They had the option to go Cucullin. They decided to go with the tier. And you look at the other side, no leaps to pull in, but has that insurance against the Tiamat if that is the pick for Hurwind.
I was actually going to go on the Erlong board for layers. He definitely has quite a few of those assassins in his arsenal, and Robin, maybe a better version of the Erlong here. Mystic Rush going to be great for trying to just force himself into that back line, and that's the main image that I'm kind of getting from this Scarabs draft. You have the Hercules, the Tyr, the Robin. This like triple warrior feels like, I know Robin's an assassin, but like he can feel like a warrior at times. Very curious to see how Layers opts to build him. I wouldn't be surprised if he might lean towards something a little bit more hybrid focused just to try and I want him to see just PandaCat not getting to play the game again. I think that's what we're trying to get from the Scarabs comp so far.
I think so too. And you look at 4 jungler bans against Layers. He drops down to this Robin. The Scarabs have only taken it once so far, but it was in a winning effort. So he's found something that he's comfortable on, and I like for the Solar Scarabs. But again, their composition is high execution, not a ton of guaranteed lockdown. But it worked out for them in game 1. They were able to get off to that great lead. How dependent on that Uller do you think that was? Do you think the Anhur can enable that duo lane as well as the Uller did?
I think the Anhur can enable it. Not only that, Anhur can actually survive during the siege factor. That's where the Solar Scarabs nearly ended up losing out on this match in Game 2, is because it's just hard to stay alive. It doesn't matter how phenomenal of an ADC player you are. If you're not in that axe stance, which most Ullers are not going to be when trying to siege a Phoenix, it's very difficult if the enemy team just decides to commit everything onto you, because it does not take a whole lot to catch out Uller. And the Anhur, I think having that jump away preference is going to be great.
You and I both pretty high on the Fafnir. Mike decides to change it up despite no ban on the other side. How much do you like the Ymir in this sort of composition in comparison?
I still love the Ymir, because even when I'm looking at Hercules tier Robin, the only real way for Scarabs to kind of escape that Ymir wall, which is, that's pretty much the whole reason why I think so many teams are shifting their attention towards this Ymir pickup in the first place. He just has a lot of space control, and that's something that Jade Dragon's front line has always been fantastic at. Polar Bear Mike, Fino, Sam. We even saw so many instances between Fino K and Sam alone where they were zoning 3 different members from Scarabs with just 2, and that's pretty tough to accomplish when you're on the back foot. And speaking of back foot, Scarabs, I feel like, play better with their backs against the wall.
Yeah, it's felt that way, hasn't it? I mean, their
Yes.
game 1, sometimes a little bit rough. They've certainly bounced back here in game number 2. Well, no more wiggle room for the Scarabs. Game 3, do or die for Dave Olsen and Gormizer.
That's right. Could it happen again? Could the Solar Scarabs beat the Jade Dragons again? Look, the fact that they've already done it, the fact that you've beaten Jade Dragons in individual games, I think, is a big accomplishment because of how well the Dragons have played this year, up with the likes of the Leviathans, the Kings, and the Solar Scarabs have shown serious potential over the last few weeks. They beat the Jade Dragons in an entire set, remember the last time these two teams played. We are maybe on the verge of it happening here yet again, Gore. It is a different look, though, out of the jungle this time for both of the junglers. Layers goes to the Robin, and then Sam for Soccer picking up the Thanatos.
Yeah, and it's an interesting look, at least for Sam. It feels like, in my eyes, look, if you're inbound Zapman on her Hercules, that seems like a very good kill lane, no matter how you want to slice it. Same thing could be said maybe for the Ymir Danza, but realistically, I see a lot of aggression on the side of the Scarabs here in the duo lane. And I think Sam's going to try to match that pace. I don't know. It's always been back and forth a little bit with this Thanatos for him. Sometimes it comes in and it is the best thing you see, and sometimes it's slow.
Blinks into the mid lane there, finds some damage, but it is returned twofold onto himself. So now Sam for Soccer and Hurrywin both a little bit lower than maybe they had bargained for there. We've seen this early pressure, though, from Sam on a pick like this. I think one time we saw Sam with this pick, he rushed boots right off the bat, and then I think that was the benevolent start before the changes, so obviously can't do that now. But looking for that aggression early on, that Scythe Gore absolutely chunks, and I think he can catch some people by surprise, like Inbound maybe looking to catch mid lane by surprise here. Inbound shown not the ability, the desire to do this a little bit. Rotate out around level 2, see if you can get something in mid lane before heading back to duo.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him hover around, not just in duo lane, but in mid, like do that bounce back kind of ping pong between the two lanes, as it is exactly what I want to see out of him. He was really solid in game number 2, and I think his aggressiveness and his nature of play on this Hercules is what really opened up a lot of the opportunities for the early lead the Scarabs found. So I want to see him do more of that, as long as it means that they can find themselves another comfortable lead. If it ends up costing him his life too many times, it starts to be a little less cost-effective.
So the pressure from this Hercules will be wildly important in the early game. Felt like Pandacat Gore just couldn't play the game at all there in game number 2. Pushed back consistently. The Anhur found a couple of openings for some impact as the game went on, but Zapman on the Uller was just way too effective. Sam for Soccer lurking over here on the right-hand side, but SOT nursing that half-level lead. Gonna play safe enough to stay alive. It's once you start hitting that level 5 mark, isn't it, on this Thanatos, where you really find that impact, that hovering death, so potent in finding some pressure the moment you tick over.
And it's because it causes so much that you have to play around. I mean, early on, it's less so like, I mean, yeah, good executing, you know what, on the players like Inbound SOT, that's probably what you're going to see out of it, but it's also really good setup, say, on a Yanis to stun him from getting to a wall and then all of a sudden smacking him with your scythe. Like, there's a lot of damage available
Absolutely.
once Sam hits level 5. I would argue maybe a little more so that you can do with that ult than what we see out of Ravin. Ravin is going to be great, and honestly, right now is going to be the start of his peak throughout this game. So I expect to see some pressure from Layers, but they both transition in different ways to the late game. I'm excited to see what Sam's going to be able to do, even if they get aggressive or not, because that's going to be like the big question mark, right? If you want to, there's a lot of potential.
PBM gets stunned out here, and a wall from inbound to keep a wall from PBM, excuse me. I'm thinking that's inbound's wall. A wall from PBM to lock himself in place there, I guess. The Solar Scarabs make no mistake about that one, and first blood goes on over to the jungler.
It's one of those moments, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You don't throw that wall up, you're impaled, you're stunned. You throw that wall up, they're body blocking you, you can't walk anywhere. Like, there's almost nowhere to go. It was to try and block some DPS from Zap, but, well, that ult goes through walls.
It was such a good wall to keep himself in place. That's why for a moment there I was like,
Yeah,
that had to have
felt
been
so good to lock him down even more.
that had to have been a Scarabs wall, right? It was so good. And then, no, of course, it was Mike keeping himself where he is. But that's right on time, isn't it, with what we wanted to see from Layers
Yes.
here in this early game.
I mean, being able to get aggressive, and in a way, Inbound did have his own wall up, and Layers as well, because they just body blocked Mike against the wall to the point where there was nowhere to go. I mean, that might have been the world's easiest on-her ult for Zapman. It was such a good setup. But this might actually get turned around on him.
PBM not happy with how the last engagement went. He will blink
what
in
a good
forward. This
boulder.
time it is a great wall to keep Inbound right where he is, but instead the Solar Scarabs respond quickly. 2 more kills on the board for the Solar Scarabs. Sam for Soccer with maybe one quick volley can turn this fight around, nearly gets Layers. Panda Cat lurking back behind as well, and it looks like a 2-for-1.
Might be able to get the red buff on the end of this, but yeah, like you said, a 2-for-1 feels a lot better for the Scarabs here. Yeah, you lose Zap, that's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I think, and this feels bad to say, but he's the most expendable on the team right now. I think he is the one, maybe except for an early kill onto SOT, that if he dies, it's not the end of the world. Zap's going to be able to get the items online. He's doing fine. Don't stress too much about him over there. It is a little unfortunate the kill, or one of the kills, goes on to Panda Cat there for the Dragons, so they're able to pick up something in their favor. But it was one of those moments. You had called it a good wall, but that wall and that pillar, I don't think Zap intended it to be what it did, but that boulder got some really good bounces because of the geometry that was thrown up by the players, not even the map. And I think he got a lot more damage down than the Dragons were expecting in such a short amount of time. And it's definitely going to affect them now. I want to see a little bit more coming through here, specifically from Sam, that could create some good space for them as time goes forward. I think the Thanatos, especially with where he's looking right now, I mean, that could be a really good, clean gank for him. Again,
Yeah, it could be.
He hit level 5. I'm looking towards him to be this kind of ult machine. I mean, like Scythe does a lot of damage. His silence is insanely good, but we've only gotten to really see him engage once there, and I'd like to see a little bit more for him pushing forward, at least to be aggressive as a jungler.
Yeah, agreed, and we'll jump right back into the action here in game number 2 after a quick pause. The players will give us a second to stand up, stretch those legs a little bit. SOT and FineOK have been quietly dueling it out here, Goremizer, over in the solo lane. And this is kind of the, in my mind, maybe one of the most fun kind of push and pull matchups that you got. You get a tier on one side, a King Arthur on the other. The mindset feels so similar between those two that it's almost down to the players, isn't it, when those fights start out?
I'm looking, I think at SOT, felt really, really good on that King Arthur last game. Can he have the same presence on the tier? Like you said, have similar mindsets at least, but can his play style, or just how he plays this god in general, fit the way that they need this to in order to find themselves success? That's where things get a little shakier, and I think at least FineOK should be able to coast a little bit more early on. It's those team fights that are going to be such a pain when they get together, because looking at the draft style and the way they're playing so far, again, it's all this Hercules.
Mike blinks in, throws up the wall. Baronic through his own portal. Look at the damage from Sam for Soccer, but through space and time, right on through the Thanatos. Sam for Soccer will hovering death his way away from this engagement. The Solar Scarabs, they get surprised there, Gore, by PBM, but the swift reply to nearly grab a kill onto the Jade Dragons jungler, very impressive.
I like the way they're playing. Again, good style. Weirdly enough, using PBM's walls to their advantage more often than not. Panda Cat's coming into the lane. He's going to look for a solo onto Zap.
Whoa, Zapman doesn't leap that far away, and Panda Cat's got the 1v1, and he'll taunt right in place there. There is something just so humorous about watching that rocket just kind of like weave its way on in, and then Don Zaburo leaps on out, grabs the 1v1 up against Zapman. Now Panda Cat finds himself 2-0, one level ahead of Zap.
I mean, that's a good start for the duo lane. Zapman was a big prioritization even in the last game in terms of getting things ahead. That Uller really drove home the duo lane, but right now I'm still looking at what the jungle has been able to do. Layers has stepped up and been more aggressive. That Ratatosker didn't get a lot of kills, didn't get a lot of anything done early on. He was just kind of power farming to the point where he got levels and levels ahead of Sam. And I'm looking at him now, that 2-0-1 slash line. It's getting to the point where we're at least seeing a little bit more out of him, and I think that's kind of the push and pull, right? We'll lose Zap, but we'll raise Layers, and if that's what it takes, sometimes that's what it takes. And I really like the way that, again, the way the Scarabs are playing it, as long as they can keep this up.
Oh, I love it, right? And this is the Layers that the Desk talked about in the pregame, the Layers that has kind of found his footing as the phase has gone on. Remember, all the way back, it felt like, I say all the way, it's been not all that long so far in here into Season 8, but back when the Scarabs got their first win, a lot of that was Layers kind of popping off.
Yeah.
And the Scarabs have not been without their woes, don't get me wrong, but it feels like these types of games, and granted this one far from over, the type of game where Layers starts to go off a little bit, drive that pressure, is becoming a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, and I think, well, now we get to look at the replay. And you know what? I'm going to agree with you, but it's not any less ridiculous from his perspective than it is for the spectator.
Right.
Maybe slightly less ridiculous. We have a monitor over there. That's why I'm looking off vaguely into the distance. So maybe slightly less ridiculous overall, but I think it looks very good. And, hey, look, you get a solo kill. I think you keep Zapman down. It's good, but, and there's always that caveat, how long can you keep it up? Like, is it going to be long enough that he doesn't get items online, long enough that he doesn't have an impact? I don't think so.
Tall ask. Yeah, it's a tall task for sure here, especially after the game that Zapman had in game number 2. If he's able to find his footing here as we jump back into the action in game number 3, the Jade Dragons might have something to be worried about in this on-her pick. Transcendence just now bought for Panda Cat. A few stacks underway already for Zapman, about 30 there. So Zapman feeling comfortable with the way that lane has gone, despite the solo kill that came out there for Panda Cat. Layers lurking close by here as well, Gore. This set has kind of taken a shift, hasn't it, over towards the left-hand side. A couple maybe ganks, a little blue buff pressure over on the right. It feels like all eyes have been around these hunters.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that there's a lot of reason for it. I'm keeping my eye on the junglers, but outside, I mean, Layers, a couple of these ganks have been really solid, but they've been more or less quiet compared to what I was expecting out of this game, especially this early on. It feels like this is the forte for both of these guys. I mean, this is where they're supposed to be the loudest. They're supposed to be screaming, and they're just kind of meandering through the game, right? And I do think that there's a transition. Thanatos is my favorite just because watching what he can do later on. Right now, it's a lot of damage.
Whoa!
Akin to that.
There goes half of Layers' HP. Baronic with the big blast from the mid lane, and Sanford Soccer goes down. Mike will wall off too. But what a flurry of damage there. I don't think Sanford Soccer is assuming that one's going to happen. You got to be inch perfect there if you're Baronic for that one to work out in your team's favor. Layers lost a lot of his HP really quickly, traded some back onto Sam, and helped set up for that kill.
The good news is both of these junglers, and again, it depends on how the engagement's going for which one you're rooting for, but they both have some sort of self-sustain, so in the middle of a fight, they will be able to bring themselves back a little bit. Ravin, not quite to the extent that we're used to seeing out of Thanatos, and Thanatos, outside of the Scythe, really does want some deaths going his way in order to get a good heal go for him, but I think it's something that Sam's going to be able to do. Later on, we're looking at an execute, though, and that's where I think things are going to start coming into a different conversation. Right now, there's cool amounts of damage, but he's 2 levels down. Is he going to be finding a lot of fights? Probably not so much. Later on,
maybe.
Hey, inbound's a little low. Solar Retro's a little low. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm not looking for these carries anymore. I'm not going for them. I'm trying to get rid of the front line, and that created a lot of space for the Scarabs in Game 2. I think that this Thanatos could be the answer that they need for the Dragons, but it needs to stay about this close, right? It can't really get any lower than 2 levels down.
Looks like Inbound has really found his footing on this pick, hasn't he? Gore with his Hercules.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need to see it on a more consistent basis to hail him the Hercules King or anything like that, especially with some of the names we've already got in the league. But Inbound now showing, through 2 games at least, and maybe a couple more so far here in Season 8, that this is the type of pick that could work for him, that gives him the chance to run forward, find these engages for his team. He's affected 3 out of the 4 kills that the Solar Scarabs have so far. Looks like the Greater Scorpion with a little of that left side pressure will go down.
I thought it was a Gold Fury, and I was like, when did the Scorpion go down? How did
Why
I miss
is it
that?
dying so
I
fast?
was like, man, it's not destroying Anher's pillar. There was a lot that was going on in my mind. And then, of course, it's just the Greater Scorpion. Gold Fury should be up soon, though. That's what Inbound's looking for pressure over here.
That's a good 1-2 punch. Oh, and then the boulder actually lists its way in there and clips Panda Cat, and so the Danzaburo will have to head on back to base. I think that's something that's pretty fun with this Danzaburo kit as well. I mean, we've already talked about how it surprised Zapman over there on the left-hand side, allowed for that 1v1 to take place, but I think can surprise in some team fights as well. That mobility and the sudden re-engage from the enemy team Hunter definitely can catch you off guard here. A bit of a wave freeze going on. The Solar Scarabs will slowly push up. Purple buff is now respawning. Remember, we saw a big fight that went the Solar Scarabs' way underneath their own purple buff just a moment ago. PBM is going to get stunned on back, but now Inbound taking way too much damage through space and time splits the uprights, and now Panda Cat on a killing spree.
And finding himself a good one. Going into the rocket even. They want to
Here
get
we go.
aggressive on the Zap.
And Panda Cat right back into it. Zapman will leap away.
Wall.
PBM blinks forward. Wall low on cooldown, you have to imagine. Very close to being up. A PBM hadn't found the range that he was happy with. Soul is here as well as Panda Cat. So this tier 1 tower over on the left could fall quickly, and look at the damage that's being poured into it. Solar Scarabs can't say much about it.
Yeah, it's something I didn't start thinking about until pretty much right now. Soul plus carry, I mean, a Hunter, technically, in this case. That's a lot of damage to your structures. I mean, towers, Phoenixes, objectives in general, going to go down pretty quickly on the side of the Dragons. They have that force that's going to knock it down just a little faster. It's going to help them burn things like this. Again, maybe not the most
This is a gold
obscene and ridiculous overall ult secure, but I don't know that they need it.
Wow, and the Solar Scarabs won't be here to reply. And that feels tough, Gore. Look at that graph. I mean, granted, the gold discrepancy is so small that the Gold Fury looks like a super
It's just
steep
the mountains
decline,
that are
right?
driven on that.
The XP graph is looking like Mount Everest or something over there on the left, but it's been a steady decline in the gold graph on towards the Jade Dragons, and that Gold Fury just makes it a little bit worse. I'm maybe surprised, admittedly, Gore, that the Solar Scarabs aren't a little quicker on the reply there around that Fury.
Honestly, I think it's just, well, actually, with Inbound's Boulder, I'd like to see them aggressive on anything that they could be able to get into with Baronic there, but I feel like it's just one of those recognize that you're not going to necessarily be able to control it, look for pressure elsewhere. They aren't at the lead they had in game number 1, and that is a really good bubble pickup. Early bubble pickup, kind of not expected, at least by me, from Inbound, but with all the CC on the other side, it makes a lot more sense. It's going to come in handy for him, especially without beads, at least for another level, depending on where he goes at 12. But that's the problem right now. Last game, they had way more control over everything. They've still been winning a lot of good fights. I do still think they're dictating some of the pace of these team fights, but objectives after the matter are where they need to be important.
The blue buff fight happening now, I thought, as Sam for Soccer evaporates under the damage that Layers and SOT bring to the table. Final K pushed by the wayside here. A little bit tankier than Sam for Soccer, so you think, but it's a tier 1 tower dive through space and time, no good. If that one connects, you have to imagine the Scarabs team keeps going. Instead, it's a return blue buff invade, but now that Inbound is here, things might remain interesting. Could just be buying some space for his teammates to work on over towards the blue buff, which is secured indeed. But now there's a stun from PBM onto Layers, who will back kick his way away, and Inbound will dash away as well.
And died a lot faster there for Sam. I think that damage is going to be dangerous if you're PBM, if you're Fino K. I like the aggression. Yeah, go for it. Run him down, but is this really a fight for you? Actually, with Hurwind on his way, it might be.
Hurriwind is here, but Hurriwind's got
Panda?
next to no mana on this Soul out of the mid lane, so the auto attacks are going to have to get it done now. I think literally no mana, so Hurriwind can't really say much here in this fight. Panda Cat heading back towards the left-hand side. Mike will throw up the wall here. Is this fight kind of elongating, Gore? It's a tug of war now that the Solar Scarabs think that they might have an advantage in. PBM channels the ultimate. It looks like finally we'll have some type of disengage here as the Hunters have remained on the left this entire time.
I mean, Panda Cat looking to try and rotate. He did wander over there, but
right, briefly.
Didn't necessarily get a lot done, right? Just kind of, hey guys, I'm on right side too. Now back in base, or back in lane, I should say. Greater Scorpion will go their way. They have all those enhanced buffs on their side, Dave, and not a lot to do with them, at least right now. Again, objective burn is the name of the game for the Dragons for me. I see 2 towers that are, well, relatively healthy in mid and right, and then that tier 2 now exposed there and left. But I see an Oni Fury starting up. Pyromancer's hanging out over there. There's a lot of objectives for them to start to take. It's just a question of whether or not they want to force these fights. Still a level down in mid, as well as for the jungle there and Sam. But overall, the Dragons are still, like, it feels like they're calling more of the shots right now. Kind of, they've had a better grip on the steering wheel that the Scarabs are trying to rip away from them. That so far, neither team has been able to get so far ahead that they're actually confident in their capabilities to really pull this game back in their favor. But I think the Dragons, at least with neutral objective control, have been able to find a lot more in their favor than the Scarabs.
You can really sense, I mean, there was a lot of left side pressure by the Solar Scarabs early on in this game, and I think that 1v1 that Panda Cat won over Zapman kind of changed the tides, where the Solar Scarabs happy to defend their purple buffs, even maybe look for a bit of an invade over onto the other side. But since Panda Cat has pulled this lead, they're even XP-wise, but 3 kills for Panda Cat has maybe slowed down the Solar Scarabs on the left-hand side, or so I think. Now PBM being looked at, and the Desert Fury would all but confirm the kills. Now Layers 4-0-2 here in this all-important best of 3 on the backline. Hurrywin being run down. SOT will miss the up-down as Hurrywin makes his way beneath his own Tier 2 tower. Looks like one and done for the Solar Scarabs.
I admire where SOT was trying to throw that.
No,
now
it's
it's put him in a position. Panda Cat, where are you going to go? He jukes out every ability. They might turn this around.
Well, big value out of the Aegis as well, but Panda Cat can't get it done up against all the members of the Solar Scarabs that are underneath this Tier 1 tower. Fine, okay, stunned up against the wall. Same for Soccer being run down by SOT. Just needs a little bit more damage. The silence is through. Sam for Soccer will survive for the time being.
For the time being, no one else seems to be over there. Fine, okay, still chasing people down over here.
Fine, okay.
And he's getting it done.
Fine, okay. The Aegis gets used by Zapman as well. The pullback from inbound, but does that put Zapman in danger? No, it is not. And Baronic picks up a kill onto the Jade Dragon solo laner. Now level 17 for SOT Layers and Baronic. 5-0-3 for this Robin. 100% kill participation for Layers.
Fun to watch so far, Layers has been. I mean, like you said, not only 100% kill participation, it just feels like he's everywhere on the map whenever he needs to be. They're still going to be able to get a little vision, at least, onto the Fury here, but this is a good opening for the Scarabs to maybe start looking at. Teasing out an Oni Fury, maybe not starting it up. Especially, I mean, look, there's 2 Sam for Soccer wards, and they have the vision from the Oracles here. So it looks like they're not going to feel any sort of fear onto this one. They know that the Dragons aren't going to walk on in, and I think they're going to have that control. All ults available, but yeah, I guess without Fine Okay. Makes things a little more complicated for the Dragons. Now you're starting to look at Pyromancers. You're looking at an even game for the most part, a little bit of gold going in favor of the Scarabs, but it is 3 to 400. It is not enough to really write home about. And it comes down to the junglers right now. Like, you've got a little bit going for the Hunters. Zapman, 6 assists versus the 3 kills for Panda. But 5-0-3, Layers has had way better of a hand on this game than what we've seen out of Sam.
Yeah, the reply from this Robin has just seemed more consistent at every turn than what Thanatos has been able to provide. There was some early chunk damage, remember, from Sam for Soccer, but that's fallen by the wayside. Now Sam beneath the Hercules on the damage charts by about 300, whereas the Robin, second to the highest. Fine, okay. 4,000 damage above anyone else here in this game. Obviously, a lot of that happening in lane, but then a lot of it happening on the left-hand side there as well. So this King Arthur is still at a point, Gore. Only 1 level down. His counterpart has the 1 death. SOT only has the 1 assist. That's still an area you have to feel like where the Jade Dragons can maybe find some leverage is out of this solo lane, this King Arthur rotating into the fights. If they can, you know, find damage, if the Jade Dragons can have damage elsewhere, Fine OK showed that he can half HP both carries in a 3v1.
And that's where that pressure, specifically from Solar Troll, can come in. If he can play this tier at the same level he just played that King Arthur last game, then
SOT can
I'm
as
not
well,
too
right?
worried about it, right? But
right.
If he falters, if he falls either early on or he's not able to find the ganks that he needs or control that he needs, Fine OK should run the show, and that seems applicable for the way that we've seen King Arthur specifically over the last couple of weeks. And he's even got the Pestilence on line now to help deal with some of the healing, specifically the lifesteal that's going to come from Zap, that Aussie online, but also inbound. I think it's going to help limit him and Tier and Layer, actually a little bit of everybody on the side of the Scarabs. So ultimately,
Soul Gem for
it's going
Brian.
to end up paying itself off in gold later on. As of right now, it hasn't had a lot of chance to find its true impact. But even those small heals, they add up over time. That's where the Scarabs have been kind of self-sustaining through these fights. It's 8-3 I mean, those kills that they've been able to pick up, or at least the ones that they've not dropped, have been because of just a little bit of health going in their favor.
How about Bloodforged here for Sanford Soccer? Does that give you the mindset that he is looking for the executes in these fights that then can start to snowball as the shield comes online? Yep. I mean, I'm buying Bloodforged if I'm like killing on a consistent basis, right? I mean, if I haven't gotten any kills in a game, you have to imagine that your kid is going to start to supply some to you as the fights break out.
Yeah, it's two avenues, right? The one you just highlighted, I get the execute, shields online once I land then, and I can turn around and start to fight somebody else, potentially the back line, that's where I'd like to be. Or the other avenue, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see this as well, a stun into, I'm going to slaughter you. I've got this hi-rez online as well. I'm going to throw my scythe, smack you down with it, and then I'll get the kill in the shield.
Maybe a bit of a fight happening here. Panda Cat does not ride the rocket
jump
into the fight, but Sanford Soccer and layers in a 1v1, and Sanford Soccer stood no chance at all. Through space and time, doesn't connect onto anyone. Watch out inbound, half HP on the tank. The kiting backwards working wonders now for the Jade Dragons as they've been able to peel about half of everyone's health bar. Barana kiting back better. It's a killing spree for the Giannis out of the mid lane, and the Solar Scarabs will find 2.
You know, Dave, I've been preparing. I've been looking at a lot of milestones, right? I've thrown out games, wins, kills, assists. I think even for Benji, I threw out Ward's Place, but I have to give this one layers.
Death? Oh, no.
Just got the 1,000th death there onto Sam for soccer. Yeah, give him some claps. Good for layers.
We said we wanted it to
Not
happen.
so
right?
good for Sam. 1,000 deaths now there in his career. Granted, I looked at it. He's like 10 or less kills away from 1,500, so he's still got a good KDA at least going for him.
Oh, he sure does.
It does open up a lot of this conversation now moving forward. 0-3-1, yeah, not in this game. But he's about to be around, maybe able to say something. This Fire Giant feels free.
It does right now for the Solar Scarab. Zapman 027, the Tank Buster build online, and that'll definitely help against this Fire Giant here. Look, the Jade Dragons, they're not even going to poke their head around the corner on this one. And the Solar Scarabs, 23.5 minutes in, Gormizer, they grab themselves the Fire Giant. There are 3,000 gold, 4,000 almost gold in the lead over the Jade Dragons. One push, one fight away maybe from taking this set over the Jade Dragons and having some life here in Group B.
I mean, it's something, and we were talking about it like last week. They've done it before, but was it lightning in a bottle? I mean, the things looked a little rough for them overall. They've had some really good games, but not yet another big win like that for the Scarabs. Granted, it's not like they've had a lot of opportunities for them, right? So it is something that is going more in their favor, and if they can do it twice, maybe they're just the Dragon's Kryptonite. Maybe an even better reason for the Leviathans to have chosen them for this group, something that just seems to be ticking right for the Scarabs versus this team. And like you said, when it comes to the grand scheme of things, the overarching things, they lost a set that arguably not only should they have won, but they maybe needed to win. We were kind of touting it as a must-win because look, the other teams he had to go against were the Dragons and the Kings. It's not an easy week for you. The Scarabs still have one of those matchups. And this is the downside, Dave. They can win this. They keep themselves alive in the standings. Head-to-head still is going to matter if they end up tied. So they need a lot more precedent than this. I think this is a good warm-up, but they also have to have the Kings in their sights as well to make themselves feel a lot more confident. But this is a good start for them. They also are really lucky because the other team is about to have a really bad week going through the Dragons and the Kings as well.
That's right.
Or having already gone through the Dragons, I think. I can't remember. My mind's getting muddied up with this group stage stuff. A lot of games to still be played, a lot of standings to still be had. That's the point.
Yeah, right. And the Jade Dragons happy that they've at least been able to get that one win under their belt, feeling a little bit more comfortable so far, where it's not the end-all be-all. I mean, if you go down 0-2, that was the same threat that the Leviathans faced today, and they came up big in our first set of the day. Now it's the threat that the Jade Dragons are facing, and it is a very real threat. This one palpable as the Solar Scarabs in control of this pivotal Game 3, and Inbound wants to fight now. He will blink forward. Final K exchanges back. He's found Zapman in the backline. Now the On Her has to leap away. Frenzy gets used here. That's left SOT alone. Then the health bar, where did it go? Could there be an execute here from Sam for Soccer? The dunk lurking in the backline, and there's your Bloodforged Sam for Soccer. First kill of the fight.
And hightails it out of there. I was wondering, is he going to turn around, try to fight Zap, Baronic? I mean, there's a lot of targets, theoretically, for him to fight. He's level 20 now. He could do something, but I like the one and done. Get in 45 seconds without having to deal with SOT. Phoenix is still up. I mean, what, one tier 2 down? That Fire Giant, it's going to have, what, 30-ish, not even full seconds left after we have SOT back. So maybe there's a tier 2 still in the future for the Scarabs, but I'm looking at the Pyromancer as a pretty easy get for them. And then maybe the pause and wait game for the next Fire Giant, which shakily at this point, I mean, you've got a good gold lead, you've got the kill lead, you've been winning these fights, but that was a good showcase of where the Dragons can take some of the punch right back to the Scarabs, cause them a little more trouble, and definitely a more frightening engagement than what they've had for the last 25 minutes or so.
Gormizer, alternate timeline alert here. Hurrywind has picked one up for himself here in game number 3. If you're not feeling confident in maybe your survivability in some of these fights, it's the good way to go with the starter item.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to keep him alive and help him burn through, specifically, again, the setup, like layers, SOT, inbound, if they all in, Baronic, your cooldowns only last so long, right? And so theoretically, not just for Hurrywind, yeah, you've got immunity, but it's not going to do you everything. But same thing, Baronic, Zatman, a lot of their burst comes from abilities immediately, at least ability forward. And that makes it a lot easier for them to just ignore that. You die from the first round of Baronic. He doesn't have the second round yet. You kill him then.
Ooh, good wall. Forces inbound out and around. But no real damage on follow-up. Wouldn't you just love to see, and this is totally ambiguous, the item could have been built on either of these mid laners. I just want to see alternate timeline play a big role in one of these fights, right? Where Hurrywind dies immediately and then comes back to life and just shreds the rest of the team fight down. Again, could have been Baronic. Who had purchased it there. I just want to see the item have a big impact in one of these fights because I just think it's such a neat mechanic. Paul has built it a couple of times and didn't really hide it. I think he tweeted that day that he's
straight up said, hey, guess what I'm building?
And he did build it. So now another chance for the item to maybe find some value here. The Fire Giant has since worn off. Great repel by the Jade Dragons, just needing that one pick. And Gore, you set that stage where we were wondering how Sanford Soccer would make use of the ultimate in the early game, going on to the mid, maybe to the late game. Now we're reaching those late game stages. The Jade Dragons are not finishing off that kill onto SOT unless Sanford Soccer has that ultimate. So it's moments like that that have repelled the FG and brought this game back closer to even.
I'd say at this point, though, he's just lucky that he got out of there, right? I mean, that's a very dangerous engagement to go in. Even with the Bloodforged shield, like, it's enough that you feel safe-ish, but he's died 3 times so far. It's been pretty easy kills each time. So he does have to be very, very cautious, I think, whenever he engages like that. Plus, I mean, opportunities like that, they're going to be great. If you get burned down inbound, if you burn down SOT, absolutely execute them. That is what this ult is there for. But don't be afraid. Stun out Baronic whenever a through space and time comes through and make sure that he can't get through that portal. Find the kill there. Look onto Zatman. The problem is the same issue. When you go in, can you survive long enough to get it done?
Well, if Layers is left alone with any of the carries of the Jade Dragons, they, I think, can kiss their life goodbye. 6-0-4 for Layers. Still 100% kill participation here in Game 3. The, quote, console jungler absolutely showing up against some of the best in the league, and the Solar Scarabs putting their name in that column. They believe they belong in that conversation, but the Jade Dragons will hear none of it. PandaCat has opened up this fight with an opening kill, and SOT answers back onto the Jade Dragons carry. There's a stun from Sanford Soccer onto Baronic, and the Aegis gets used, but Sanford Soccer has the big burst damage. Hurrywind, alternate timeline. Oh, no, this one doesn't help him out. He just gets killed twice, but SOT melted through. Double kill for Sanford Soccer. Thanatos, hello, 30 minutes in.
That's one more. Okay, 2 more, maybe 3 more. There it is. Finally, someone's going to be able to get the hit. Zatman hightails it out of there. Manages to stay alive, but Fire Giant, look, this would be great. But it feels almost, well, I guess if you take 30-plus seconds to get down, it's not going to be that bad for you. But, Dave, the 2 best members for you to have a Fire Giant on are dead right now. You're going to have to hold it as low as you can and safely. With Zatman out of the equation, look, it's 10 seconds before inbound's even back. I don't think they're too stressed about it, but the Dragons are definitely going to have to kite this one and dance it the right way to make sure they don't get wiped.
PandaCat, 4 seconds away. This is enhanced 45 seconds ago.
Became
enhanced.
Wait the 10 seconds for Hurry. Come on.
Yeah, do you wait 10 seconds for Hurry? I
Yes.
suppose you do. They're going to get it very close. Right, you waited this long at least.
Might as well
And
continue.
so 5 seconds away, Hurrywind will be back, and he'll
2,
grab himself
1.
the enhanced Fire Giant. And the last bit of damage comes through, and the Jade Dragons, in 31 minutes, win a big fight, and they grab themselves EFG.
Double bonus. Everybody gets it. 2 carries. The guys that shred the towers already enough feel better, and it's an EFG. So 3 tier 2s. seems pretty easy at 31 minutes into the game. I think the Phoenixes are where they have to start looking.
Go,
Zap
Zap,
might
go.
get Primal Fury.
Go, Zap, go.
Very carefully and cautiously able to get that one. Trades it out with inbound. But ultimately, this Thanatos pops off. I mean, he was 0-3 not too long ago, now 3-3. And at the pace of this game, that's a very important part. 7-1-5 still for Layers, but it seems like they're trying to find a way, or have found a way, at least for the last fight, to control him a little more. Now it's going to come down to defenses. I actually like the Scarabs' chances of defending a Tier 2 in the sense that I think they could withstand it. They might lose more than they want, though. I am big proponent, especially with EFG, to maybe give up one of those and see if you can bait them into a bad Phoenix fight, try to burn them down there, but that's going to be more on the pace of where the Dragons want to go. The problem is with Hurrowwind and Pandacat, on the picks they are on with an EFG and just a tank, it doesn't matter if you have minions or not, a tank in front of you, towers aren't going to last that long. I want you to watch this health bar. If either of them or both of them get under there, that's where things are really going to fall apart. That's why I think you don't want to try and defend it.
Ouch. As the tower crumbles.
Did you blink?
I did blink for a moment there. That was on me, right? There was something in my eye, I blinked, and suddenly the tower was missing and couldn't do my job properly.
You can put 2 and 2 together.
Though I can assume exactly what happened there. And now it's the Jade Dragons, full 5 group over here on the left-hand side of the map. The Solar Scarabs are going to likely split out Layers, because remember, this 1v1 between Layers and Sanford Soccer is so important. It's one that through a large part of this game, it looked like Sanford Soccer would be able to win, or Layers, excuse me, would be able to win every single time. But if Sanford Soccer is able to pull Layers out to one direction, then hovering Death his way back into the fight, things could get interesting. Layers sensing where Sanford Soccer is, hovers over in the mid lane, damage reaching this left side Phoenix, just above half HP, and the Solar Scarabs have shown up to defend this left side.
How long can you keep it up? This is where I think their best bet's going to be, right? Inbound is in a good position. One pluck and pull someone back, especially if it's Pandacat, Hurry, Sam. That's going to be an easy kill for you. Honestly, even if it's fine, okay, I think you have a decent shot at being able to at least find some lockdown, but it's not going to be enough there. Now they're precariously perched is the way I would describe this. You've got a good chance of defense on this Phoenix, but they've got a minute and a half to try and siege it down.
What a turn this game has taken. Jade Dragons down in gold, down in kills, up in map pressure, into the backline. Fine OK has found Zapman. Down goes Zap after the Aegis wears out. Pandacat gets SOT as well. The Jade Dragons will hear nothing of this upset. The Solar Scarabs, they win game 2. They push us to a game 3, but in all likelihood, the Jade Dragons will take this set here in just a moment. Barana cannot participate any longer, and the Jade Dragons make their way into the Titan room and right back into the win column.
Man, such a good start for them, too. Just a couple of fights that end up going not their way, and ultimately at the end of it, it's that execute, maybe the starting threshold, that defense where specifically Sam's able to get rid of SOT, that opens the door just slightly. It's a smidge open, but we've all seen Mike. He probably just barreled down the rest, knocked it down for the team. I mean, everything from that point forward felt very clean, and then that fight around the Fire Giant there, the EFG, that's where it started to crumble. I think once they lost that, it really fell apart. The Scarabs didn't know how to collapse.
You know what I think it was? I think Sanford Soccer wanted to get to his 1000th death, and then the game turns around.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, I got it. Let's turn things around and grab ourselves the win. That puts Jade Dragons in a fantastic spot here in Group B. We'll do the math, I'm sure, behind the scenes and talk about the odds that they don't make it in the top 3. That is not our job. So our Scarabs still a hill to climb to get themselves into the top 3 and thus into the Phase 1 playoffs. That's it, though, for Gormizer and I here today. We will take a break, and the desk will break this one down.
Welcome back to the SPL, powered by Alienware. If you want to get your hands kind of like this, if you want to just like grab an Alienware product, put it right in front of you, and then you own it, because that's how it works, you go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW, and then no one from production can tell you you can't take a laptop home. If you go to the website and use the code, that's how it works. I'm positive about it. Definitely can work that way. So.
There's definitely a sticker here.
Yeah, Taco, I understand there's a sticker here that says hi-rez productions.
Very, very real sticker
right,
here.
but did you not listen to the read that I just did where
Fair
I said if I go and use the code, then I'm going to be fine because I use code SMITEAW, I should be A-OK. And the Jade Dragon should be feeling A-OK after that Game 3 victory. And it did not look good for a while there, Taco. What happened in the mid-game that allowed them to turn it around?
All of that just seemed like a rather uncomfortable final game for both of these teams. And I think for me, it was really just the Sam for Soccer debut. The classic strategy of Thanatos, not so great early game, awesome late game.
Right.
Just that's
typical.
That's how the god works.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
really well.
In your games, you should expect your Thanatoses to do poorly early and fantastic late. We're being a bit facetious, of course, because Sam definitely had some struggles early on. This man did not, however. Nice little juke on the Zapman's pillar there from PandaCat to land that kill. That's a sweet solo kill for the Jade Dragons ADC, and that was the only lane that was doing anything positive for the Dragons early on. Heroin was falling behind. Mike was falling behind. I can't even really say the lane, I guess. It was really just Panda that felt like the lone hope as Sam got off to a very poor start, but this was the fight that turned it around.
For sure. Sam just finally finding a chance to really collapse on that back line, and that is one of the benefits that Thanatos has, is that potential to really chase down through the Giannis when he's trying to create a little bit of distance throughout the team fight just to make sure that not everybody gets caught in the same place. But if a Thanatos is able to collapse on your back line, it's not a good time for anybody. But I have to say, I am impressed by the fact that PandaCat is not only a pro Smite player, but he's also a professional NASCAR driver.
Yeah, that's true. He actually made a quick little right turn right around that pillar, though NASCAR drivers usually don't do that. I think they mostly turn left. This is the post-game stats. Of course, PandaCat up near the top, but FineOK at 25,000 player damage certainly made a big difference in comparison to what he did on the Cucullin in game number 2. Poor Layers, I mean, he was, 7-1 in that game in a losing effort. All of this to say that the Scarabs now pretty much dead in this group, and it's almost a shame because they played some good Smite today.
I definitely think that this is a team where you can see the noticeable ramp-ups throughout even this first split portion, and while it's probably a little bit of a more heartbreaking result than what the Scarabs were hoping for, I think on the bright side, that silver lining will always maintain the fact that like you can see the improvement, and I think that that's important for them to keep a hold of moving forward.
Well, the gatekeeper here for the Solar Scarabs was, of course, the Jade Dragons, and that included Polar Bear Mike, their support, who's joining us for the post-game interview right now. Mike, you had to do it to them. They had to get jammed. It really was out of your hands at that point. But talk to me about what sort of rousing mid-game speech you gave to Sam in game number 3, because I'm assuming that that's what happened.
Sam said, "I'm doing nothing," and I said, "Yeah, I'm just dying." And then we both said, "Okay, Sam's going to play really far back, and I'm going to wait for us to be 5-man grouped." And from there, we just kind of dapped it up, and we were feeling good from there, you know?
Well, that seems pretty easy enough. That certainly did do the turnaround. Talk to me about the game 2 end, because something tells me that did not go quite according to plan.
So you seen what had happened was we talked about if we wanted to go. I called end initially, and Sam wanted to defend mid, and I wanted him to just run to the Titan. Then we saw like Herc, I think, as he was like pathing through mid. So I think he tried to stop that guy's back, couldn't. We had a 4v2, and then we wanted to ignore them. I think we wasted a few abilities on the Herc. I think it would have been sketchy. It died with like 2k HP, I think. Max didn't really get to hit it. Like he didn't. I don't know if he could have like CC immuned with his ult and then gotten in there or something, but it was maybe just a little bit too ambitious, and maybe we should have just done fire. I'm sure it was enhanced at that point. It would have been free. But sometimes you go for it and you get got, and that's just how it goes.
Sometimes that's how it goes. I mean, this is another close set between the Scarabs. You guys are able to pull this one out. Is this just – what's the deal with this matchup between you guys? I mean, certainly the standings tell one story, but each set has been pretty close between you two.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Ryan. Honestly, what it comes down to is – you're welcome. What it comes down to is, like, just no team is a free win, you know? Like, I think they had a really good adjustment after game 1, and they clearly tried to fight us a little bit more early. I don't think we had the best responses in our drafts, and we've already kind of talked about that a little bit, like things we might want to change and just how we played. And I think on top of that, they just did a good job of like finding opportunities. Max died in lane the first game. I got picked a bunch the second game. I think Layers through both games found some good like kills on Sam that, you know, I probably could have done a better job playing with him on. And yeah, they just played well. We made mistakes, a classic story, you know.
Well, Mike, with that win, you guys clinch a playoff spot. What are some things your team needs to work on in particular before you're ready to take home another trophy?
I think we need some better support play. Would be the main thing.
Agreed.
I had a really, really bad game 2 and game 3, honestly. So that's a little rough. Like game 2, I think there were so many fights I missed. Like I would hit one stun, we would kill somebody, and I would miss the second one, and it would have been a double kill. And instead, it just kind of whiffed out of the window. And yeah, I just don't think I had my best day, and I think we've been making some drafting errors that we're cleaning up. But you know, maybe someday.
Maybe someday. Great answer, Mike. I just wanted to let you know that. Thanks for the time, man. Congrats on the win, and we'll see you next time.
What was this? Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. That's Polar Bear Mike, the support for the Jade Dragons. Taco, I mean, you heard it there. Certainly not their best day at the office, but I think that we should be giving credit to the Solar Scarabs in forcing a lot of those mistakes.
You kind of got me there with that one, but
thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. That was
the underhand point
yes.
is incredibly threatening, and,
yeah.
I love it a lot. To be honest,
very direct, that's
yes.
for sure. But I think I would mostly agree with what Mike said, and that's probably one of the best aspects of this Jade Dragons team is that they are willing to just kind of talk through those things and just try to work together. Everyone's willing to take their portion of the blame, and I feel like if you want to adapt in a competitive environment, you have to be able to accept responsibility, even if it's not necessarily entirely on you. Like, I know Mike probably being a little bit harder on himself than he should be, but one thing that was pretty cool to see throughout that set was even the points where I felt like PBM was kind of falling off for that front line, Fine OK was right there to pick up the ball for him.
It really was that front line working together for the Jade Dragons, and that results in the 2-1 victory. That puts the Jade Dragons at 2-0 in their group and thus secures their spot at the Phase 1 playoffs. The Oni Warriors and Camelot Kings will be facing off tomorrow, I believe, and we'll be finding that out shortly in order to determine who can get a leg up in Group B. Indeed, they will be playing. They are a second game tomorrow with the Bolts and the Valhalla Valkyries kicking it off for tomorrow. Pretty big day in these groups, as being 2-0 guarantees you, being 0-2 does kind of the opposite for Phase 1 playoffs.
Well, it does technically guarantee you that you're not going to have a spot at playoffs.
True.
So, yeah, definitely a big day, though, for both Bolts and Valkyries. I don't see Bolts looking to take Valkyries even the littlest bit easy, because I know they're going to want to be on point. They're going to want to make sure that they're coming through clean and concise. They don't want to leave any wiggle room for bamboozling, essentially.
Remember, Scarabs fans, it's not all dead quite yet. They just have to hope that the Warriors beat the Kings, and then the Scarabs can beat the Kings in the head-to-head. So not quite done for the Scarabs and any other team sitting at that 0-2 mark. But thanks for watching, everyone. It was good to be back in studio, albeit a little bit odd. We'll be back tomorrow with more SPL action. But for now, you can beach it.